4 minutes after 10 is the time. A very good morning indeed to you. I hope this finds you well. Let me address immediately this morning the concerns of John in Dundee. James, he writes, if I receive a text from the Met Police, how will I know that that's not a scam? This in reference to a story emerging this morning that some 70,000 people have been victims of a fairly straightforward but obviously incredibly successful scam that the Metropolitan Police are now seeking to contact. We'll turn to that in the next hour. It is quite straightforward, as John probably realises, but a little bit of clarity wouldn't go amiss. And I remain fascinated by a particular constituency of scam victims. I remain fascinated by people, actually this is probably everybody, but people who really can't believe they fell for it. You know, people who sort of think of themselves as being clued up, as being savvy, as being on the ball, but somehow these scams, their sophistication, their subtlety can creep under the most carefully constructed defences. So we will turn our attention to that probably in the next hour. And I say probably because, well, the subject we're going to start with may well extend itself beyond 11 o'clock, or something else may pop up. There are stories around today that demand our attention, not least the revelation on the front page of The Guardian that a Conservative peer called Michelle Mone, Baroness Mone, put in the House of Lords by David Cameron, secretly received £29 million from a PPE firm that she had lobbied government to be put into the fast lane. Now, I know how successfully the right-wing media has groomed much of this country to forgive anything done by members of the same team. But I'm hoping to get hold of the journalist that has written the story. I am truly staggered by this. And it's so naive, because I presume that I think there are three types of people. We'll just do a minute on this, then we'll get stuck into the first topic of the day. I think there are three types of people. So A coronavirus kicks in, a global pandemic, thousands of people are facing death or serious illness, and some people in the political establishment see pound signs. Now, I know you're going to laugh at me for this, but I'm not sure that I want to be a different person, actually. I'm not sure I want to be someone who thinks the worst of everybody and someone who is constantly surprised and disappointed by the depths of human misbehaviour. But I just naively presume that at the time of national crisis, if you have been drawn into politics, then the abiding thought in your mind is, cometh the hour, cometh the man or woman, and that I must get my shoulder to the wheel, my hands to the pump. You know? You're in politics. You've been drawn into politics. You've been drawn towards politics. And I still naively think, whether you're left-wing or right-wing or somewhere in the middle, that deep down there must be something about that attraction of political life that has something to do with looking after other people. I know, you're already laughing at me. Dominic Raab, you're shouting, or Nadine Dorries, perhaps. But I just presume. And then when there is a time of genuine crisis, actual jeopardy, the idea that your first thought is, how can we make some money out of this? By using our contacts and connections. I'm sorry, I don't want to be different. I want to carry on being shocked by that kind of thing, but I have rarely been as shocked as I am by this story. 7 minutes of which we may turn to a little later in the programme, because I wonder whether the way to approach it is down that. I mean, it was Balzac, wasn't it? Or possibly Dostoevsky. One of these days I'm going to look it up and actually find out who said that behind every great fortune there is a great crime, which doesn't necessarily mean illegality, of course, but can mean a moral aberration that current circumstances seems to win you sort of the highest prizes. But we're going to begin with the Home Secretary. We're going to begin with something that popped up in the course of yesterday's programme that I think is staggering. And it occurred to me that the people who profess to care most about immigration or refugees, and they're two very different things, albeit that they have one rather obvious thing in common. The people who profess to care the most about it actually care the least. The strangest thing about covering this, from a position of innocence, if you like, when I started working here nearly 20 years ago, and I couldn't quite believe the pungency of callers who would ring in whenever this issue arose. So just to give you a quick insight, if you like. I'd never done anything like this before, and I had led quite a sheltered life, it turned out. I'd never really encountered like vicious hatred. I'd never really encountered bigotry, prejudice, racism. Obviously, I was aware of what it was. I read about it. I knew some of the issues, but I'd never actually looked into the eyes of somebody who hates black people, or who wouldn't want to live next door to Romanians, or who thinks that gay people are disgusting. I'd never encountered it. I'd never come across it. I didn't know it really existed. And remember, I was educated by monks, so we had quite a lot of fairly deep prejudices imposed upon us under the guise of religion. But most of it washed over me. I didn't really know it existed. I thought it was kind of... I went on a National Front march when I was a kid. Calm down at the back. My father was covering it for the Daily Telegraph, and I think he was charged with looking after me that day because Mum was busy. And I knew, because Dad explained it to me, what it was about. And I remember the memory of being amazed that there were pushchairs there. Some of the people on the National Front March were pushing pushchairs, and I couldn't quite, in my tiny mind, I couldn't quite understand how there could be children at something so hate-filled, because obviously it must have been learned, just like weird little synapses in my brain that I never really got it. I never understood it. I certainly had no idea how intoxicating it could be. The Holocaust, for example, I just felt had occurred almost on an alien planet. And it certainly couldn't ever unfold in a country that I call home. There must have been something peculiar and alien about Germans in Nazi Germany. But of course now we know there isn't. It could happen anywhere. And it has looked recently probably more likely to happen in places like America and the UK than any of us ever thought possible. So the people who care the most about immigration actually care the least. They are usually lying when they claim that, it's the lack of control that I object to. Not always, okay, not always. It's the lack of control that I object to, because I've watched people like Farage quite closely over the years. And what these people are very, very good at is providing cover and camouflage. You know, you hate foreigners because you're disgusting, right? But what you need is some camouflage. You need to be able to say, oh, no. I hate uncontrolled migration. Well, why? Well, because we can't cope. When's the last time you spoke up about birth rates or were condemnatory of people having more than 2 children? Oh, I've never done that. But what is it exactly you've got a problem with? Well, it's borders. We need to control our border. You just hate foreigners. You hate all of them. It's why I took calls in the run-up to the Brexit vote from people who were adamant that we needed to leave the European Union because there were too many Muslims in this country and too many brown faces behind the tills in the local Tesco. And on it goes, and on it goes, and on it goes. So, remarkably, it creates a political landscape in which the truth has completely disappeared. And again, Albanians coming here at the behest of organised crime is camouflage for the fact that you hate all foreigners, you hate all immigrants, you hate all refugees. Because you don't deny sanctuary to someone fleeing war or famine or worse. You don't deny sanctuary to them because they might be in the same boat as someone who's swinging the lead. You don't do that. You don't ban all Muslims from coming into America because some of them might be terrorists any more than you ban all Americans from coming into the UK because some of them might be white supremacists. It's just obscene. But it happens, and it panders to a prejudice, people who hate foreigners or people who hate people who are different from them. And no one's born like that. It's always injected. It's always created. It's always cultivated. And it means that the camouflage becomes bigger than the reality. The desperation to believe that your position, or at least the desperation to display that your position actually has an intellectual basis rather than an emotional one, that it is evidence-based rather than a visceral, vile reaction to reality, means that you come up with all sorts of confections, you come up with all sorts of camouflages. And one of the biggest is, in this year, has become the idea that everybody coming here in a dinghy is an illegal immigrant. And they've worked up to this. They've worked up to this. Because it didn't quite start like that. When Farage turned up in Dover a few months ago with his Fisher-Price binoculars, rubbing his thighs and licking moss off his teeth every time he got a photograph of a dinghy, it wasn't quite suggested immediately that they're all bad. But it's quickly escalated. So everybody coming here in a dinghy is an illegal immigrant. And that rhetoric, that lie, has now reached the highest echelons of government. Rishi Sunak talked this week about it being the top priority for his government to deal with illegal immigrants, talking about people in dinghies, most, not just many or some, most of whom are bona fide refugees. But of course the newspapers don't tell you that. The newspapers want you to be angry, because the angrier you are about these people you've been groomed to hate, the less attention you'll pay to things like, a woman put in the House of Lords by David Cameron taking 29 million quid of public money for providing PPE via a company that she recommended to the government. Stuff like that, you don't want to worry about stuff like that when there's a 16-year-old orphan you could be throwing abuse at down in Dover. And that's what made yesterday so incredible, because Tim Loughton, a politician I only came across for the first time last month, when I was reminded at a gathering to celebrate an anniversary of an adoption charity that I work with, that two children's ministers, Edward Timpson and Tim Loughton, had been great advocates for adopted children and for children in care in this country. It was a timely and helpful reminder not to be footballified, not to let your own scarf be so tightly tied around your neck that you could never acknowledge the other team are playing a cracking game, or at least putting in 5 minutes of quality football. And he did something yesterday that nobody else has managed to do, partly because he got the access, but it was a lesson to journalists as well. Anyone who's interviewed Suella Braverman at any point over the last year should be hanging their head in shame at their failure to do what Tim Loughton did yesterday, because he did this.
Let's do a bit of role play. I'm a 16-year-old orphan from an East African country escaping a war zone and religious persecution. And I have a sibling legally in the United Kingdom at the moment. What is a safe and legal route for me to come to the United Kingdom?
Well, we have... you're fleeing which country, sorry?
Any African country.
Any African country. Well...
Be any continent, but let's say any African country. I don't want to name one, because then their Prime Minister might have a go at me for demonising their population. So let's just theoretically talk about an African country which is going through a period of turbulence and which is persecuting its citizens, including an innocent 16-year-old like me.
Well, we have an asylum system, and people can put in applications for asylum.
How would I do that?
Well, you can do it through the safe and legal routes that we have. We have offered 390,000 places to people seeking safety from various countries around the world.
I'm not Syrian, I'm not Afghan, I'm not Ukrainian, not any of those specific schemes. The Dub scheme is historic. What scheme's open to me?
Well, if you are able to get to the UK, you are able to put in an application for asylum.
But I would only enter the UK illegally then, wouldn't I?
Well, that would, if you put in your application for asylum upon arrival, that would be the process that you enter.
How could I arrive in the UK if I didn't have permission to get onto an aircraft legally to arrive in the UK?
Let me just invite other colleagues if there's anything they want to add.
I mean, you could engage with UNHCR. I mean, depending which country you're from, you could engage with UNHCR, and that would be a way of getting leave to enter the UK in order to put in an asylum claim. But I accept that there are some countries where that would not be possible.
I think the point is that there's a shortage of safe and legal routes, other than for specific groups of people that we have generously offered safe haven.
I've engaged with the UNHCR, which is what the Permanent Secretary of the Foreign Office there suggested that these people should do. That refers to the UN Refugee Agency in the UK. They tell me that the UNHCR is currently able to refer a limited number of refugees to the United Kingdom for resettlement each year, but the pathway, while life-saving, is not open to the vast majority of refugees. Most refugees simply have no access to a safe, regular pathway to the UK or elsewhere. Fewer than 1% of refugees have access to resettlement in any country worldwide each year. So not only is Suella Braverman criminally delinquent in her understanding of the system which she defends and presides over, but the Permanent Secretary, who she pathetically turned to in the hope that he might be able to dig her out of a hole that she'd fallen into, with her eyes wide open, said something that simply doesn't stand up to scrutiny, or at least provided 2 specks of soil in the hope of filling up the gaping chasm at the bottom of which Suella Braverman was writhing. And crucially, they both clearly provided evidence that there are no so-called legal routes to this country for the huge majority of the world's refugees, which should change everything. Should change the nature of the debate, should change the nature of the conversation, should change the nature of our country. But it won't. We'll work out why this hour, and we'll begin with this question. You've heard that now. Here she is. Here's the crucial moment in that little clip you heard, when the Home Secretary is absolutely exposed.
If you are able to get to the UK, you are able to put in an application for asylum.
But I would only enter the UK illegally then, wouldn't I?
Well, that would, if you put in your application for asylum upon arrival, that would be the process that you enter.
How could I arrive in the UK if I didn't have permission to get onto an aircraft legally to arrive in the UK?
Let me just invite other colleagues if there's anything they want to add.
That is immense. You can't do it. You can't be, quotes, legal, end quotes, refugee under Suella Braverman's Home Office. Here's a question for you. It's going to seem like a strange question, and we'll certainly move it along a little bit in the course of our contemplations this morning, but this is the question I want you to answer. And by the way, before you fill my inbox, I'm perfectly aware that a valid and quite possible answer to this question is both. A little bit from column A and a little bit from column B. But you've heard it now. You've heard it a couple of times, and I might play it again. Do you think that Suella Braverman failed to understand the system over which she presides, or do you think she does understand it and actually relishes the fact that there are no safe routes to this country for most refugees? She just never thought she'd ever find herself in the position of having to advertise it in public. So does she not understand 0345 6060 973, or does she not care? 0345 6060 973, because I'll tell you something for nothing. If this country possessed a fraction of the values that people like Suella Braverman and her Conservative colleagues like to tell us we should cherish and respect, then her career would now be over. 24 minutes after 10, this by text. She doesn't think she needs to know or understand or care, James. She just needs to parrot the right tabloid phrases to the right audience. Speaking of the current Home Secretary, who either doesn't know what system she currently presides over with regards to refugees coming here via so-called safe routes, or knows that there aren't any, but doesn't care. I don't think there's a third option, except, of course, both. She could be doing both, but I don't think there's a more forgiving or a more charitable option. If you think there is, and you can tell me, 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. And the phone lines are open. I've got more clips to play you, but let's break up the monologue at least a little bit before we do that. Tassir is in East Dulwich. Tassir, what would you like to say?
James, hi. I think she knows full well. There's been refugee agencies that have been pointing to this for weeks and months.
In her defence, she's not very bright.
Well, she's in government.
I know, but so was Nadine Dorries, so's Dominic Raab, so's Grant Shapps. I mean, the old days of presuming a certain level of basic intelligence, Jacob Rees-Mogg are behind us. So just because it's been there in plain sight, if her prejudices or her position is so entrenched, so visceral, so emotional, she could conceivably have overlooked some of the facts and evidence that you're citing.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's possible, because it also there is a sequence of Home Secretaries that have been put in their position. And funnily enough, they all happen to be of South Asian origin, which is my origin. Right. I was born in Lahore, Pakistan. I followed Chelsea, if you remember, but a separate issue, just to remind you who I was. But they have been put into place a sequence of South Asian origin Home Secretaries to propound and propel precisely this type of policy. I think I allow you to say that, because you've established your own credentials. But I know that if I said it, I would be accused of racism. In fact, I can tell you who by. There's an Observer journalist called Sonia Soda who accused me of racism
recently for suggesting that the simple fact that people from families of immigrants, families with a history of immigration, hold these views, I find very hard to understand. But I wouldn't reference their ethnicity. But she made some interesting and powerful points that changed me slightly. So I'll let you say this. I don't think I can agree with it.
Well, yeah, I mean, what's her origin, I wonder? But
it doesn't matter, does it? Because you can't say to someone, you're not allowed to be right-wing simply because your family is brown. Or what I said was, I can't believe this hatred, this apparent hatred of refugees or immigrants when your own family has a history of immigration. Both of those positions, apparently, if you say family of immigrants, it's code for brown, and it means that unintentionally you're actually being racist.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's perfectly possible for people of that origin to be racist. I have relatives that are. It's sort of ingrained attitudes that come out automatically, and it's generational, but it's also not generational. So it's perfectly possible for people of that origin to be racist against people of their own origin.
And I suppose that the point that was made to me is that they've got as much right to be racist as anybody else has. You can't say that it's somehow more disgusting because they come from a certain background, whether it's just simply being Caucasian but having immigration in their recent past, like Dominic Raab, or being Asian and having immigration in their recent past. They've got just as much right to, let's not even say be racist. Let's say they've got just as much right to be viscerally opposed to immigration or deeply unsympathetic to refugees as somebody who can trace their family in this country back to the Doomsday Book. They have just as much right to be like that.
Yeah, but I, from my origin, the background, am allowed to see and understand where they're coming from. And I think I'm allowed to feel that they are being, I don't know the word, but I think they
I think you are, but we'd have to check with the Observer journalist on whether or not she agrees that you're allowed to feel what you feel, or at least to publicly articulate it.
But the point is that that's one thing they are allowed to be. But the second thing is that the government is selecting and putting precisely those people of that origin in that position as a minister, so that those policies can be put forward in that way and propelled in that way, so that they are trying to disarm exactly that sort of criticism. Oh, wasn't me, Gov. It was, look who's doing it.
And also, perhaps, to avoid precisely the line of questioning that Tim Loughton found the wherewithal to follow with Suella Braverman yesterday. I think you're suggesting that if that had been a white Home Secretary, perhaps these questions would have been asked a lot more recently?
I think that's right. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, but I think that's right as well. And I mean, that was a masterful line of questioning, and I'm amazed that nobody's done it before. Because not because I thought of it, but because there were people, possibly even on your show, sort of from refugee agencies, that have pointed to precisely that. There is no.
So she knew exactly what she was presiding over, but somehow she allowed herself to be tripped up by Tim Loughton yesterday.
Yeah, she knew.
I'm not
been
sure. Yeah, I know. I mean, I want to believe you. I'm on a hopium high again. I want to believe that she didn't know, because the alternative, that she did know, doesn't care, and just hope to get away with it, is worse. Tazir, thank you. That it's an important distinction to make. It is absolutely reasonable, I think, to argue that your own family's history of immigration should not somehow mean that you have to be incredibly relaxed and in favour of immigration. It shouldn't have. It's unreasonable to expect, whatever Tazir may say, it is unreasonable to expect people to hold certain views specifically because of their own family history, or indeed their own ethnicity. But it's a hard lesson to learn, but I'm in the process of learning it. You cannot say to Dominic Raab that just because his dad was a refugee, he should be a hell of a lot more warm and welcoming towards modern refugees than the current Conservative Party would allow. As I say, it's a work in progress, but that is an important point. There's an expectation that because you're from a certain background, you should hold a certain view, and that's not fair. And if that background involves ethnicity, it is a form of racism. But I can't help, as an adopted person, I can't help thinking that I feel more kindly towards adopted people. And if I was an immigrant or the son of an immigrant, I can't help feeling that I would feel more kindly towards the son of an immigrant or another immigrant. But you don't have the right to demand it. You simply don't. 10:32 is the time. Dominic Ellis is here with the headlines. 10:36 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where the question is remarkable, actually. And so far, nobody's suggesting that there is a more generous or a more compassionate reading of Suella Braverman's position either. She didn't understand that there are no safe legal routes to this country for the massive majority of refugees. And remember, in comparative terms, we do a fraction of what many of our European allies and neighbours do in this field. Or she does know, but she doesn't care. So which is it? She doesn't know, she doesn't understand, or she does know and she doesn't care, which means that she repeatedly and routinely presents deeply dangerous, disingenuous and dishonest positions to the British public. Julian Suffolk writes, of course she knows that safe legal routes don't exist for most refugees. Yvette Cooper has been repeatedly challenging her, and Priti Patel before her. Braverman just didn't think quickly enough to avoid the question this time. Another text, the truth is they do understand that there are no safe routes, but they do not accept that foreigners in any shape. They just can't find a legally acceptable way to say or implement this. Hi James, she doesn't understand or care, so the answer is both. She's also completely out of her depth. That's Neil in Tenby. Andrew says, the answer, James, is the latter. She is vile. And appalling, James, both column A and column B. Totally. Finally, Pete, who's in Accrington, says the words she is dancing around. If you get here like that and claim asylum, you aren't legal. She absolutely knows what she is doing and saying, and she was just caught with her hand in the till. And if you think this is unfair, just have another listen to the crucial moment, because you have been told that everybody coming here via a dinghy in the Channel is coming here illegally, which creates in your mind the idea that they had choices. And if they were proper refugees, or if they were coming here in a case of genuine need, there would be routes through which they could travel. Now, that might be true for Ukrainians. It might be true for Hong Kong British nationals, who make up the massive majority of the reason why you've just heard that immigration in this country last year hit an all-time high. But it is not true for people coming from Sierra Leone or Eritrea, or somewhere where perhaps genital mutilation is commonplace for teenage girls. All of these reasons, or where you're likely to be shot if you don't join a local militia, or where you could be killed for your sexuality. There are no routes. How do I know that? Well, Suella Braverman accidentally told me.
If you are able to get to the UK, you are able to put in an application for asylum.
But I would only enter the UK illegally then, wouldn't I?
Well, that would, if you put in your application for asylum upon arrival, that would be the process that you enter.
How could I arrive in the UK if I didn't have permission to get onto an aircraft legally to arrive in the UK?
Let me just invite other colleagues if there's anything they want to add.
Pathetic and disgusting. Disgusting to hold the position that she holds, whether it comes from ignorance or callousness, and pathetic to pass it on to a colleague after she had been brutally exposed. Roger is in Stevenage. Roger, what would you like to say?
Yeah, she is supposedly a barrister, and all good barristers know their brief.
Good barristers.
Yeah. I'm a retired police officer. I went to Crown Court cases on numerous occasions and worked with prosecution, and they've always known their brief. You can send them the paperwork and you can sit down and have a talk with them. They will take you through it themselves better than what I could have done.
Yeah.
She has been banging on since the Tory party conference about immigration. You would have thought that she would know the rules, the legalities, etc., of the immigration system, because it's a pet project. She had the same failings as Attorney General. She didn't understand ECHR.
In her defence, she could be a really bad lawyer.
Well, she's unfit for the job of Home Secretary.
It would appear like that, unless the requirement for being Home Secretary in Rishi Sunak's government and Boris Johnson's before that is it? Oh, actually, was it Liz Truss that put her? Well, anyway, the requirement for being a Conservative Home Secretary at the moment is not to be across your brief. The requirement is to deliberately mislead and inflame and provoke the public about matters to do with refugees and asylum seekers. And just for the record, I'm not saying that last bit with my tongue in my cheek, Roger. Maybe that is the job description. Maybe that's the brief.
Well, Rishi Sunak said he's got a government of talent. obviously he's not read his brief either.
So you're going in, I'm going in, as is my wont, on the morality. You're going in on the basic professionalism and competence of this. As a former copper, I wouldn't expect any different. This is somebody who is essentially charged with representing the country on a difficult case involving asylum seeking, and she either doesn't understand what she's talking about or doesn't care about the law.
Well, she doesn't understand what she's talking about. She doesn't understand the law, because if she did, she would have had the answers when she was asked the question.
I hear you. It sounds like you're flying a kite, Roger. No, I don't mean in the terms of the contribution to the programme. I mean in terms of the meteorological conditions that are currently plaguing your attempt to be heard on here. But I mean, listen, I'm not being a hopium addict this morning. I'm being a bit of a hopium addict when I say I hope she's just stupid. I hope she's not actually vile in this way. It's a grim hope. It's what, 52-48. 52% stupid, 48% vile. But in terms of wondering what it means, that's when things get really scary. Because you could be listening to this now, right? And you could be someone who has been successfully persuaded that everybody trying to get into this country is doing so because they don't need to. You may have swallowed the nonsense about, well, they could stay in France. But, of course, Tim Lawton's question was about a 16-year-old orphan whose brother is here. So forget the fact that the nonsense about you could have stayed in France or France is a safe country. There is no basis in international law for that. Otherwise, the only countries that ever took refugees would be the countries bordering the countries where there are war. Now, you look at a country like Saudi Arabia, it actually has way more refugees than pretty much anywhere else in the world. But the idea that every single refugee fleeing a country that borders Saudi Arabia should go to Saudi Arabia and stay there forever is obviously absurd, unless you're a racist looking for camouflage, or unless you've been successfully spooked about refugees and asylum seeking because you're only a tiny bit racist, but the threat works on you. So you need some camouflage. You can't just say, I don't want anyone coming here. You have to say, oh, well, why can't they stay in France? Or why can't they stay in the first safe country they come to? I'm not criticising you. There are extremely well-known and well-paid broadcasters and columnists and commentators in this country who will say exactly the same thing. Some of them don't understand that they're talking bilge, some of them don't care, and some of them do understand that they're talking bilge, but do it for the same reasons that Suella Braverman does it. So park that notion immediately. 16-year-old, orphan, brother in this country. How does he get here? Answer, he can't. How can Suella Braverman not know that? And if she does know it, how can she not care? Claire's in Fleet. Claire, what would you like to say?
Hello, how are you? You all right?
Yeah, I am actually. How kind of you to ask, Claire. Thank you.
That's right. No, I'm actually, like, thought I was bubbling with nerves, but I'm actually bubbling with rage.
Right.
Because she does know exactly what she's doing.
Are you
and the
sure?
reason yes, I am. And the reason I say that is there is another clip from that very same meeting of a female MP whose name I cannot remember, I apologise, and she asks Suella Braverman a simple question. Did she know when she took her role as Home Office that the conditions in Manston were unlawful?
Okay.
And when, or if she didn't, when was she told?
Shall I play the clip?
Yeah, you can do. It's quite long, isn't it, I think? But
4 minutes and 24 seconds, Claire.
Yeah, but she refuses to answer.
I'll come back. So we'll come back after the break with the clip and then with you, yeah?
Okay, yeah,
All
sure.
right. Crikey, it's almost like we planned this.
Yeah, no.
Carry on like this. People are going to start thinking I'm a professional broadcaster with a crack team of producers on the case. We'll soon set them straight. 10:49, Claire in Fleet suggesting that something else Braverman said in front of the Select Committee yesterday rather demonstrates, even perhaps proves, that she is all too aware that there are no safe legal routes to this country, even though her government continues to insist that people coming here via the only means possible automatically become illegal immigrants or criminals. Let's listen to that clip. It is quite long, but this is hugely important. Hugely important. And I'll say it again, the more you profess to care about immigration, the more you should care about this, because it's proof that you've been lied to.
Why it
explain
has been
to us,
very
though,
difficult
could you
to
explain
source the
what
accommodation.
you did when you came in as Home Secretary? You're saying you knew there was a crisis. So when were you told of the developing problem at Manston, that people could only be held for 24 hours? There was exceptional circumstances to extend that, we understand, to a maximum of 5 days. So when were you told that the Home Office was breaching the law?
As I've said, when I first arrived at the Home Office at the beginning of September, I was incredibly aware of the pressure at
But when were you
Manston.
told you were breaching the law?
And I was putting into place, and I will invite the Permanent Secretary to confirm exactly what happened.
My question's quite specific.
Yeah.
When were you told that the Home Office was breaching the law around detaining people for more than 24 days?
We'll get to that point, but I need to tell you what I did in September and what I knew. That's what I'm trying to do.
We just need the date. When were you told? You started as Home Secretary. How many days later were you told about the problem? Was it day one?
I would really
Did the
like to
Permanent
finish my
Secretary-
answer.
Tell us when were you
So I'm trying to tell you what I knew and what I did
Okay, well, please
when I
tell us
first was
then.
appointed as Home Secretary.
Okay.
Right. So when I arrived at the beginning of September at the
Right.
Home Office, I was very much aware that there were very high levels of numbers coming in to
Yes.
Dover. I was
Okay.
very aware
Yeah.
that there were there's an acute need to source accommodation urgently and quickly. And that's why during the month of September, we brought on many hotels and many beds.
With the greatest respect, my specific question to you is, when did your officials tell you that there was the developing problem at Manston and that you were breaching the law?
Right. Well, I will answer that in a straightforward way, and
do.
I'll have to repeat myself. I was aware from the beginning of my tenure that there was a problem at Manston. When it comes to legal advice, which you're asking specifically about, it is a government convention that we don't talk about the issuance or the content of legal advice. But what I will say is that in every decision that I've made, both as Home Secretary and as generally a minister, and I say this as a former Attorney General, I have always whenever I've been provided with legal advice by officials, I've always taken it into account, read it, listened to it when it's been delivered to me orally, and borne it in mind when decisions have to be made.
Okay.
If you're suggesting that I either wasn't told about legal advice
Not
or I
suggesting
deliberately
anything.
ignored it, that is simply not true.
I'm not
But
suggesting anything.
I cannot, for convention reasons, and also because we are facing
Okay.
legal challenge, get into the specifics about what legal advice and when was given.
Right, so...
And can I just invite the Permanent Secretary to add anything that he might want to add about what happened?
I can confirm, Chair, that what the Home Secretary said is accurate, that the Home Office officials made the Home Secretary aware of the legal
Right.
position as well as policy options from the beginning of her tenure.
Right, thank you. I want to put to you this then. It's reported that on the 15th of September you were informed about the deepening problem at Manston and that you were likely to be in breach of the law. That was the 15th of September, so you'd been in post, I think, 9 days when you were given a submission to say there was a problem. Then I understand you were given a second submission on the 22nd of September saying there was a very high risk that you were in breach of the law, 50 to 70%. Then on the 1st of October you were again told there was a very high risk that you were in breach of the law. And then on the 4th of October, again, 50 to 70% you were in breach of the law. And the advice was that the Home Office does not have power to detain while waiting for onward accommodation or welfare reasons. So are those correct? That's been in the press, leaked documents from the Home Office.
Well, I'm afraid I'm
You're not
not going to comment on leaks, and I'm not going to comment on the specifics of legal advice,
Okay.
whether the fact or the content of it. That's not how government works.
Claire's in Fleet. I mean, crikey, Claire. Remind us why you feel that was so damning.
Well, I mean, it's as much as listening to it as actually watching it. And if anybody's on here thinking, go and find the clip, it's her face. The whole thing. Her face, the smugness. She knows, that is a face of a person that knows exactly that they have completely ignored every piece of advice that they've been given to fit an agenda that she wants.
What's
And
that
the agenda
agenda?
that
What,
The,
sorry.
the agenda and the narrative is to demonise these poor people and to make it
Over 70% of whom, when they do get here, have their applications approved, of course.
Exactly, and it doesn't. It's the narrative, and I think it's been repeated before by other people. It's the narrative of keeping these people at the forefront, so most of the people or the people they want to keep on side focus on that, and they don't focus on the failings. Everybody's talking about this conversation. Nobody's really talking about Lady Moan and her 29 million quid.
Well, hang on. I've done both this morning.
I know you are.
Give us a chance.
But
and
I mean
the Lady Moan story is on the
generally.
front page of The Guardian, and it's made...
It is.
it's made other newspapers as well. Even the Mail give it a little bit further back in the book. So I think on this occasion, it's not a distraction necessarily, but it is a deliberate. So if you say, what is the job of the Home Secretary, whether it's Suella Braverman or Priti Patel, the job is to keep stoking the flames of anti-immigrant prejudice, which is quite hard to do because, as we learned today, the reason why migration figures are so high is largely because of Ukrainian refugees and Hong Kong British nationals. Yeah. So we don't really want to turn the fury of the British public on them just yet, although we'll keep them in reserve in case we change our minds at a later date. How can we possibly keep these flames burning when most of the people coming here are coming from Hong Kong or Ukraine? I know. Let's go for the actual asylum seekers and refugees in the dinghies, some of whom will not be coming here in good faith. Some
by keeping safe and legal routes off the table, they are pouring petrol on it.
It's incredible, isn't it? And I mean, even those of us who knew before are reeling from having it exposed in such glorious Technicolor.
Yeah, it just makes me so mad. It makes me so sad that we have someone of this caliber. Let's say that. At the forefront of our political
Do you know what's even worse?
Landscape.
What if she's actually brilliant at the job that she's been given?
Possibly.
Same with Priti Patel. What if we're just completely misunderstanding what the job is and they're playing a blinder?
Well, it could well be. I mean, she nailed her colours to the mast when she ran for leadership.
Yeah,
Some of the things that she said in her leadership campaign were absolutely abhorrent. I don't know why it's not that she doesn't know the job, although, I think it's widely known that she's, massively incompetent in a lot of things, like claiming her rights over some kind of book contribution when all she did was a photocopy.
The gentleman that wrote the book objected to her having it on her CV. We should probably reveal a little bit more of that as well. And Claire reminds us that if you are paying attention, it is pretty much impossible to defend most members of this government because the facts are out there. The problem is, of course, that most people don't know all the facts and therefore are capable of defending them. And I'll say it again, that applies to people in my profession just as much as it applies to Bob down the pub, That's where we may go next, because there must be good people who are comfortable with offering refuge to desperate people who've been persuaded in the last 9 months that somehow bad things are happening and the people coming over and the dinghies are all wrong uns. You must exist. How do you respond to the news that you have been so disgustingly misled by the actual Home Secretaries of this country? Thank you, Claire. Alison's in Ashstead. Alison, what would you like to say?
Oh, hello, James.
Hello.
Well, actually, you and Claire, you've actually just made all my points for me.
Sorry.
So I'm a little bit redundant, but I'll repeat them anyway. Well, first of all, she knows exactly what she's doing, and it's a totally deliberate policy for the reasons that you and the last speaker just said. And the reason why I'm prompted to call is that 2 days ago I thought, why would anybody vote Tory? And I thought the only thing they've got going for them is fear of immigrants.
Whew, that's all that's left now, even after,
Why would you? Why would anybody vote Tory? Because people used to trust them on the economy. That's gone.
Gone.
Law and order, gone. Brexit, gone.
Done.
Done or gone or whatever, but
it's not gone and it's not done. But they can't offer it as a reason to vote for them anymore. I suppose they can do a little bit of, well, if you don't vote for us, it might be undone. But now, of course, a massive majority of the country thinks it was a terrible mistake in the first place.
Oh, please don't talk to me about Brexit. I can't. It was too awful.
To be fair, if you don't want to talk about Brexit, you're possibly listening to the wrong radio programme.
Yes, I know. But one more point is that what is the Labour policy? I mean, they're missing a trick. If Labour came out and said, we would solve the immigration crisis, because it does need solving, the first thing we will do when we're elected is we will open proper offices to offer legal routes in various hotspot or not hotspot. And that brought me to a third point. What do other civilised countries do? And why don't we do it? Do you know the answer?
Well, I know that you can apply for asylum in a variety of ways, legally and safely, without having to get into a dinghy. I mean, the fact that we've got a water border is relevant to this conversation, but there are lots of countries to which you can apply for asylum, which is why we come 19th in Europe for the per capita that we take, the per capita numbers that we take. But there are loads of other countries that are bad as well. I mean, we're not the worst in the world or anything like that, but we're far from the best, far from the most welcoming, which is what a lot of these people have been persuaded to believe.
Yes. And also, while we're on immigrants, they don't want to be stuck in hotels. Some people say, oh, look at these immigrants. They're in nice heated hotels. What they want to do is work.
Yes, of course. And have money in their pocket, just like the rest of us do. But I guess that's the ultimate obstacle, isn't it? That idea of saying, well, just like the rest of us do. Just like you, just like me, just like your mum, just like your dad, just like your children. Exactly the same, just from a different place. Can't do that. Go there and it all falls apart. And what would the Tories stand for, as Alison asked, if they didn't stand for being vile now to refugees? And that's the fascinating thing about this other story that's broken while we've been on air. The fact that immigration has hit an all-time high in this country, higher than any other year since the Second World War. I know why. And I worry, even as I tell you that I know why, that the facts will once again be thrown away. What will Nigel Farage say today, do you think? Will he talk about how wonderful it is that we've offered a home to Hong Kong British nationals or offered sanctuary to Ukrainians? Or will he just spout nonsense about numbers? 5 minutes after 11 is the time, and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. So, I mean, what a day, really, to discover that the Home Secretary either doesn't know what she's presiding over in the context of asylum seekers and refugees, or doesn't care about the fact that for the massive majority of people fleeing war, famine, and whatever it is that they're fleeing, there are no safe routes or legal routes, if you want to call them that, but I'm beginning to worry that vocabulary should never have been allowed to take hold into this country. We also learned today that as you heard in the news bulletin, that the number of people coming here from overseas is the highest it's been since the Second World War. That's a record high of 500,000, according to ONS estimates, much of which is going to be due to resettlement schemes for Afghan refugees, visas for Ukrainian refugees, and settlement for British Hong Kong nationals, which was, I felt, a creditable and wonderful piece of legislation that actually took me by surprise. It puts net migration at the highest level since records began. We did get close to these figures during the Syrian war in March 2015, when, you'll remember, Germany opened its doors to 1 million Syrian refugees, and we opened our doors to various racists dancing around media studios complaining about the fraction of that number that we were prepared to take. You've also got a lot of non-EU students coming to the UK and getting visas, and that would have been on hold for 2 or 3 years, so there's probably been a form of bottlenecking. So the Office for National Statistics estimated that net migration of non-EU nationals to the UK was 509,000. I think that the net numbers for EU nationals are negative because so many people are leaving and so few people are coming now. So I think if there's any confusion on that issue, that's why we're looking at the net numbers for non-EU nationals coming to the UK. So I think 750,000 Ukrainian refugees have gone to Germany in 2022 so far. So just to give you an idea of where we sit on this. Now, what I'd like to do now is try at least to knit these two stories together. The tragedy of Suella Braverman, but also, of course, the reality of these numbers, the reality of these migration numbers. And we may even throw in a question that our last caller posed, which is, if they can't be whipping up people about immigration in general or refugees in particular, if we can't be whipping people up about that, what can we actually do now? Now, whether you approved or disapproved of Keir Starmer's very political intervention on immigration earlier this week at the CBI, if you accept that all the Tories have got left is the illusion of being tough on immigration problems caused largely by 12 years of Tory rule, then you can see at least the political facility of Keir Starmer trying to steal their lunch. But now you know what's going on. I'm fascinated to know whether or not it changes your mind in any way. Here's the question, right? How can I tell the difference? And I will use myself as the lens for this question. How can I tell the difference between somebody who was opposed to the... And also I thought that Charlotte Lynch's report cleverly made the point that these numbers don't conclude the 30 or 40,000 of people coming in boats, roughly 70% of whom will have their applications approved. So in the context of immigration, the people in the dinghies are negligible. And yet, Rishi Sunak has described them as his government's top priority. Just think about that for a minute. So you're supposed to make people very cross about immigration. We voted to leave the European Union because it was too high, right? You remember that. Everyone agrees on that. We voted to leave the European Union because immigration was too high, yeah? Okay. It's higher than ever now. And we've got more job vacancies than ever before. Because an awful lot of the people that we're offering sanctuary to are less fit for work than the people we're not offering sanctuary to. And good. I mean, you're coming from Ukraine with no English at all. You can hardly be put to work in the Dog and Duck tomorrow afternoon, even if you'd be desperate to do some work. You're going to have to learn the language first. Same with people coming from Afghanistan. A 16-year-old orphan fleeing war-torn Africa and a war-torn African country because his brother's here and he's got no other living relatives left in the world. Absolutely no safe route for him to come here. No legal way for him to get here. Amazing, right? We're still deporting Windrush people, or trying to, until relatively recently, and most of them haven't received their compensation yet. So it is a complete mess. And the only way the Tories can benefit from it or avoid responsibility for it is by continuing to throw fuel onto the fire of utterly unjustified fury. So here's who I want to talk to. And I don't know that you will ring me yet, because I appreciate I can come across as a bit overbearing sometimes, but I would love to talk to you. I would really love to talk to you if you can't quite believe what you've learnt in the last 24 hours, that even the Home Secretary knows there are no safe routes for most refugees. You presumed that the people were getting into dinghies. I think it's this, all right? And this could be wrong. It might be a penny drop moment. It might be yet another on-air embarrassment, okay? Just bear with me for a minute. I want to get this absolutely right. I think the rhetoric around small boats, which began as most of the most disgusting things in this country over the last 10 years have done with Nigel Farage. I think the rhetoric around small boats has been deliberately designed by right-wing media, by right-wing grifters, and latterly by right-wing politicians. It has been deliberately designed to create the illusion in the minds of British people that the only reason why they are coming in boats is because they are not proper refugees. Just think about this, it's heartbreaking. That is why, up to and including Rishi Sunak, people use the phrase illegal immigrants to describe people who cannot come here, to describe genuine refugees whose applications would be accepted. If they got here and submitted the application, you describe them as illegal immigrants deliberately to create the idea that they wouldn't be risking their lives and handing over their life savings to get into a leaky dinghy in Calais if they were genuine refugees, if they were genuine asylum seekers. That's why people talk about working age men, as if your nan could make the journey from the Middle East or from a war-torn African country to Northern Europe, as if you'd want your children to try it rather than your working age son or your working age brother who hopefully would be able to get there and begin to either make money he can send home or make a life that you could join as productive tax-paying members of this country. That's it, isn't it? That's why they've done it. The whole point, and I've struggled to get it at times. I've been a bit lazy. I've just thought, yeah, racist, whatever. It's just the new Breaking Point poster. And it is, of course. But it is, in many ways, even more insidious than that. Because the rhetoric, the obsession, the constant reporting, the counting, the descriptions, it's not an accident that people have started attacking the RNLI, is it? The actual Royal National Lifeboat Institute. What do we want? Fewer lifeboats. When do we want them? Now. Or rather, lifeboats rescuing fewer people. Another story that broke today. French rescuers failed to help a sinking boat. With 33 people on board, only 2 survived. BBC's got hold of emergency calls made to the French Coast Guard that suggest desperate passengers were repeatedly told to call UK emergency services, despite being in French waters when they first requested help. Now, how can that not make you... Proud's not the right word because all these people died. But the idea that our Coast Guards, who are volunteers, will go and rescue anybody in distress, while the French effectively put down the phone. That makes me proud. That's what British Coast Guards do. That's what our RNLI does. Do you know why it makes me proud? Because I'm patriotic. Not being jingoistic or xenophobic about the French who behave disgracefully in this context. But I'm proud that the British RNLI, the UK's Royal National Lifeboat Institute, here is shown to be an organisation that will risk the safety and the lives of its own members in order to rescue anybody in distress in water. How can that not make you proud? Because the newspaper columnist you read thinks they should be left to drown, or they should be treated like cockroaches, or they should be shot. Or the politicians you're fond of talk about water cannons or boats to repel them, or electric cattle prods, or whatever the language is today. So the whole point, and I'm so sorry it's taken me so long to completely get this, the whole point, all of the journalists, all of the commentators, all of the presenters, all of the politicians, all of the pundits, all of the paper reviewers, the whole point of this is to create the idea that the ones in the boats are wrong-uns, that the ones in the boats are swinging the lead, that the ones in the boats are frauds. And it's worked, hasn't it? So, if you fell for that, and I completely understand how you might have done, and for what it's worth, if you care, I forgive you for doing so, because I want to talk to you. If you fell for that, so successful. You fell for the idea that all of the humans in boats were undeserving, unworthy, dishonest, unwelcome. You fell for that idea because it's been so carefully seeded, so carefully cultivated. How do you feel now you know that it's not true? How do you feel? Because I have to keep believing that an awful lot of the people who are publicly opposed to refugees or publicly opposed to asylum seekers, I have to keep believing that you've ended up like that because of the effort put into persuading you to be like that. I'm never going to believe you were born that way. I'm never going to believe that you can comfortably look at human suffering and think, yeah, meh. I just won't. I never will. I'll die naive. Because I think you have been successfully persuaded the only reason they're getting into the boats is because they know that their applications would be rejected if they came here via safe routes, right? Now you know there aren't any safe routes. How do you feel? 0345 6060 973. There are no safe routes for the massive majority of the world's refugees. We take, in comparison to similar-sized countries, a fraction of what many other countries take. And don't talk to me about population density or anything like that, because the comparators are there. All of this is camouflage. I'm desperately looking for something that allows me to say I don't want them coming here without saying because they're foreign. But you're good, you're decent. You just believed that these people were fraudsters, con men, because that's what you've been told. That is the very deliberate idea that has been created. They must be getting into those. I wouldn't get into those. Would you put your child in that dinghy? Would you do that? They must be dodgy. They must be this. They must be that. And it's worked so well that even I couldn't see it until today. I'm not being arrogant. I'm just saying I talk about this more than is perhaps healthy. But there it is. Today you found out, or yesterday you found out, even the Home Secretary knows, if we're being generous, even the Home Secretary knows that for the massive majority of refugees fleeing female genital mutilation, fleeing war, fleeing coercion into terrorist organizations, fleeing phosphorus, fleeing bombs, fleeing minefields. Or most of the refugees in this world, fleeing religious persecution, fleeing homophobic persecution, most of the refugees in this world have no safe route into this country. So when they get into a boat or a dinghy, they do so because that's the only way they can come here. Which is why Tim Lawton's fictional 16-year-old orphan from a war-torn African country was so effective in highlighting this point. There are no safe routes. The top priority of this country is dealing with illegal immigration, says Rishi Sunak. There are no safe routes for the people that he's talking about. Go on. If I've just described you, give me a call and tell me how you're doing, all right? we were going to talk about financial fraud this hour because of the story that broke overnight. About 70,000 people have been contacted by the Metropolitan Police because they've been victims of financial fraud. But let's talk about political fraud. Let's talk about you as a victim of a political fraud visited upon you by this government. The idea that the people getting into boats in Calais are not honest or are all lying when there are no safe routes. 0345 6060 973. It's 20 past 11. 23 minutes after 11 is the time. So, after being told for years, or certainly months, it feels like years, that all of these people coming here in small boats are swinging their lead, taking the mickey. And why? Well, because they're coming over in small boats. No one with a genuine claim would come over in a small boat. And now we discover via the Home Secretary's humiliation at Select Committee yesterday that the reason they get into boats is because there are no safe routes. How do you feel as someone who fell for the lies? Hit the numbers now, you will get through. Let's start with Emma, who's in Market Harborough. Emma, what would you like to say?
I guess I don't really fall into that category. I was telling the person who answered the phone, sorry. I listen to your show all the time, but always on catch-up, and I've never called before.
Okay, welcome.
Hi. So basically, there's so much I could say because I'm so passionate about this subject, but around about 7 years ago, when Island Kerdy washed up on the beach in Greece, sparked something in a lot of people. Yeah. And I was one of those who went out to Lesbos and to numerous other places from then around Greece and to meet people in the camps and to help and to just show solidarity, not charity, but empathy and solidarity. And really, it terrifies me now. There's so little that you can do. I feel so helpless. There's things happening and being said now that you could have never got away with back then.
Well, describing refugees who've come here via the only means available to them as illegal immigrants is probably quite a good example.
Yeah.
And the Prime Minister is doing that. The Prime Minister is doing that.
Yeah. It's just absolutely disgraceful. And I mean, the same happens in Greece. People arrive on an island in a dinghy, and they get taken back. It's been documented, taken back into the sea and pushed back to Turkey in a dinghy. And just going through as well what's happening in the hotels and people saying about people being in the hotels. You mentioned earlier, people do not want to be in hotels. In Leicester, there's a lot of Afghanis in a hotel that have been in there for months and months and months. It's not a dignified way to live. I mean, I've sat with people on a border in between Greece and Macedonia who've literally got nothing in a tent. And the group I was working with, they would bring food for people to cook, and they'd cook on these little makeshift campfires because that was so important for them to be able to choose what they were going to cook and to cook it themselves for their family. And they were living in a tent. They didn't know when their next meal was coming, and they would always insist that I would go and sit with them. I met lots of women there.
What do you say?
It's important to cook.
Of
they
course
can't
it is.
cook in these hotels.
I understand that. And it's the same for care leavers, actually, who are often put in places that don't have cooking facilities. But in fact, that leads me into my next question, because what do you say to somebody listening to this who's here and really struggling and not getting anything like enough help, who would argue or could be successfully persuaded to argue that we shouldn't be helping these people, we should be helping him? And I don't mean the liars who say we should help our own and then never help anybody. I mean the people who actually need help but aren't getting it at the moment.
I guess I would say that, there's a lot of gaslighting for us to be angry with those people who are are the most in need, when actually it's these multi-billionaires, millionaires who are running our country, who you should be angry with.
It is. I mean, it is a bit glib. Sorry, you carry on.
But I mean, I was just going to say, asylum seekers, when you look at the figures, actually end up bringing more money into the country in the long run than they take from the country. These camps, you meet doctors, nurses, teachers. Yeah. Give them a chance.
Immigration is profitable. I mean, it was before Brexit, and I presume it still is now, although I haven't checked. And actually, oddly, the number of student visas that have been issued in the last year it may have thrown a bit of a spanner in the works of that historical profitability of immigration. Thank you, Emma. I can't. I mean, you went to Lesbos, did you, or did you just go to?
Yeah, Lesbos
Wow.
and Chios and Athens and a number of other places, Macedonian border.
Where the problems are much
and-
greater and the reactions are often just as horrible, as you've reminded us. It's not a problem that's unique to the UK. But if you're fleeing the Middle East, then Turkey or Greece is arguably the first country that you might come to. The idea that they should all stay there is obviously ridiculous. International cooperation and you may be able to come up with some sort of answer, but we've elected to cut ourselves off, not just from the European Union, but also from international obligations. And what do they want to do next? Cut us off from the European Convention on Human Rights, unless, of course, you're Owen Paterson, who's on his way to the European Court of Human Rights to bring a claim against the British government just 3 short years after he was arguing publicly why we should leave the jurisdiction of the European Court of Human Rights because something immigration something. Dan's in Southfields. Dan, I'll come to you first after the news, Dan, actually. Glancing at the clock, I may as well hit one junction on time today. It's a hard habit to break. And then this other question of what's it like to be a victim of this con? And I don't mean, we're full or we can't afford it or we can't. Listen, if we are a country that can spare 29 million quid for Michelle Mone in pure profit from a PPE company that she recommended to the government that she's part of as a Conservative peer, then we can do a hell of a lot more to help people in need, whether they were born here or born in outer Mongolia. Don't waste my time with these if you care so much, why don't you put them all up in your spare room? That's a really powerful argument if you're being forced reluctantly to hand over your spare room to a refugee. If you're in that category, give me a call now. I'll make you famous. 0345 6060973. But you're not. So when you say things like that, you're an idiot. But I have sympathy for you, because you've been pushed into a place of idiocy by people who do what I do for a living. 11:30 is the time. Dominic Ellis is here with your headlines. 11:34 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. We'll go on with this conversation because it is so important. The entire country has been completely gaslit by successive Conservative governments and racist members of the media, either failing to understand or pretending to believe that people coming here in so-called small boats from France are all dodgy, because if they weren't dodgy, they'd come here via safe routes. And as the Home Secretary was forced to concede yesterday in Select Committee, there are no safe routes. And we haven't even had time to talk about Michelle Mone, who very helpfully reminds us that the government has enough spare cash to give £29 million to a member of the House of Lords via a VIP lane PPE firm that she, wait for it, recommended to the House of Lords. But of course, we can't afford to help anybody because, bleh. Theo Ushwood is here.
To bring you up to date about Lady Mone.
Baroness to you, mate.
Now, of course, full credit, of course, to David Conn,
absolutely
The Guardian.
Spectacular journalism. And I can tell you exclusively, there is more to come on this.
Right, okay. Because it's his work, and it's really important to set out at the beginning that when The Guardian and David Conn asked why Baroness Mone did not include PPE MedPro in her House of Lords Register of Financial Interests last year, her lawyer replied, Baroness Mone did not declare any interest as she did not benefit financially and was not connected to PPE MedPro in any capacity.
Just say all that again.
Last year.
Because the BBC didn't include this on their paper review this morning. Did you know that? They did the front page of the Metro, the Eye, the Financial Times, the Times, the Telegraph, the Daily Express, the Daily Mail, the Mirror, the Daily Star, which is brilliant at the moment, by the way, proper funny, although it's gone down the old let's attack the Germans because they lost at the football yesterday route today, and the Sun, all appeared on the BBC, in the papers section of the BBC News app this morning, but the story you're talking about didn't.
Right, so this is what her lawyer said to The Guardian last year. I'm quoting, Baroness Mone did not declare any interest as she did not benefit financially and was not connected to PPE MedPro in any capacity. But now, further digging by David Conn has revealed that the Conservative peer and her children secretly received £29 million originating from profits.
Say that again.
Okay, this is the
number.
£29 million.
Say it more slowly.
£29 million.
Say it like Dr. Evil.
£29 million. Sorry.
was appalling. Carry on.
Was that not really good?
It's like £29 million.
Right, okay, £29 million, originating from the profits of a PPE business that was awarded a large government contract. And now this was after she recommended it to ministers. And of course, all of this comes from documents which came from HSBC. And of course, this was after documents suggest that her husband passed on money from PPE MedPro, which secured £200 million in total of contracts. And that followed lobbying of ministers by Baroness Mone. Now, all of this has reached the House of Commons because Angela Rayner, the deputy leader of the Labour Party, James, has asked an urgent question on the floor of the House of Commons about exactly what is being done by the government to deal with this problem.
Can you say now what due diligence was performed in awarding the MedPro contract? Mr. Speaker, today's reports concern just one single case, but this government has written off £10 billion alone in PPE that was deemed unfit for use, unusable, overpriced or undelivered. Worse, ministers appear to have learnt no lessons and have no shame. As families struggle to make ends meet, taxpayers will spend £700,000 a day on the storage of inadequate PPE.
Now, Neil O'Brien from the Cabinet Office was...
No relation.
No. Neil O'Brien from the Cabinet Office was dispatched to answer the urgent question. This was the substance of his reply to Angela Rayner.
The Honourable Lady asked two main sets of questions. One is, what are we doing on PPE MedPro? It's been widely reported, Mr. Speaker, that it had an underperforming contract, and let me set out what we do in those cases. The first step is to send a letter before action, which outlines a claim for damages, and that is then followed by litigation in the event that a satisfactory agreement has not been reached. And to answer the Honourable Lady's question directly, we haven't got to a point where a satisfactory agreement has been reached at this stage.
So there's no satisfactory agreement between the government and the PPE contract, which was awarded to Baroness to MedPro, and the fact that it didn't meet, in the eyes of the government, the standards that they require in order to pass that PPE.
So let's just
equipment.
run through the facts then, and you stop me if I make a mistake. £200 million worth of government contracts secured by this company.
PPE MedPro.
PPE MedPro, which last year Baroness Mone's lawyer stated she did not declare any interest as she did not benefit financially and was not connected to PPE MedPro in any capacity.
Yes.
It now emerges that her husband Douglas Braverman was paid at least £65 million in profits from PPE MedPro.
Yeah.
That's on business worth £200 million.
Yeah.
65 million in profits, which was then distributed through a series of offshore accounts, trust and companies, and the ultimate recipients of the funds include the Isle of Man Trust, set up to benefit Mone, who was Braverman's fiancée at the time, and her children.
You missed an important bit at the beginning. You missed an important bit at the beginning, James, because PPE MedPro secured those £200 million worth of contracts after Michelle Mone lobbied ministers.
Yeah. Now, the reason I missed that out was because there have been cases in the past of companies being put onto the VIP lane, and maybe even in circumstances that most of us would consider to be dodgy, but inquiries have subsequently concluded that even if they hadn't been on the VIP lane, they would have got the contract.
Yes.
So the major offence here is the profit.
Yes,
it's exacerbated by the VIP lane and what appear to be lies about personal involvement and personal enrichment. But and lobbying for a company with which you were involved without disclosing that you were involved is obviously an offence, but lobbying for a company is not.
Yes, and the other thing to say is that just because...
This is unbelievable.
And just because you are on the VIP lane, and this is the point that the Cabinet Office Minister Neil O'Brien also did not guarantee that you would get the contract.
No, but it made it 10 times more likely than if you weren't on the VIP lane, if I remember correctly.
Yes, it meant you were more likely that you weren't. What's also interesting about this is it's not just Labour who are really unhappy about this.
Well, of course not. Everybody with a conscience should be really unhappy about this.
Tory MPs are also really unhappy.
Well, I can't believe you make £65 million profit on a £200 million deal. And, of course, as you've discussed, some of the equipment wasn't fit for purpose, was it?
Well, the other person who's unhappy is the Conservative backbencher, Christopher Chope.
Mr. Speaker, does my honourable friend agree that if we hadn't wasted billions of pounds of taxpayers' money on PPE, then we wouldn't be having to increase taxes as much as we are? And can he answer the question as to what has happened to the £122 million which was spent on 25 million gowns supplied by the company referred to earlier, but those gowns were never used and they weren't fit for purpose?
Lord Agnew, of course, has already resigned from the government. I can't remember which one. Was it the one before last? It was Boris Johnson.
Yeah, it was Boris Johnson's one.
Over the failure to actually go after the people that had trousered huge... Well, actual fraud, not even what we're talking about here, which is taking a ton of money for shoddy goods and then not giving it back.
And Lord Theodore Agnew wasn't happy.
Theodore. You see, look at that. Just getting a bit of Theodore action in there. Carry on.
Lord Agnew, James...
Theo to his friends.
Lord Agnew, James, was... disappointed. This was one of the reasons for his resignation was because there was an economic crime bill and it was possible for the government to put in loads of measures within the economic crime bill to stop it from happening again, and then the government didn't, and then he resigned. So that's one of the reasons. But what's also interesting from what Sir Christopher Chope said, and I know he may not usually get an outing on your programme, but there is an argument...
Stopped clocks are right twice a day.
But the point is that there are Conservative backbenchers who are really angry about the tax rises that their constituents are facing, that have been implemented by Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak, at the same time as it's emerging that potentially billions of pounds of money, or millions of pounds, I should say, was wasted on PPE contracts. Well, the total, in fact, is £10 billion. In this particular case, £200 million. Now, of course, there is an investigation that is taking place, and Neil O'Brien said that it's yet to reach a satisfactory outcome. But, of course, as he said, there could be litigation on behalf of the government against Michelle Mone, Baroness Mone, and against MedPro if there is found to have been a situation where they cannot resolve or come to an agreement over the money.
A lawyer for Mone, who was, I think, ennobled by David Cameron, wasn't she?
Yes.
She made her money in lingerie. She ran a very successful lingerie company. A lawyer for Mone said there are a number of reasons why our client cannot comment on these issues, and she is under no duty to do so, which is an interesting response, to say the least. And of course, PPE MedPro, as a number of my rather knowledgeable contributors are telling me, was only incorporated in May of 2020, so the company was effectively set up to do this.
Yes. If it was incorporated in May 2020, that was, 3 months after 2 months after the lockdown was implemented, and of course, as the NHS scrambled to find necessary equipment.
It was in October 2020 that Braverman, the then fiancée, I don't know whether they got married by that point, transferred £28.8 million to this trust, this Isle of Man trust, originating from PPE MedPro profits, 5 months, as you say, after Mone helped PPE MedPro secure contracts to supply masks and gowns for use in the NHS. There it is. It's not going away, this story, is it?
No.
And you must buy The Guardian today. I rarely encourage you to buy newspapers, but this is just such an astonishing piece of journalism. I can tell you now that much older and wiser heads than mine, all Theos, have been shaking today at how David Connor's managed to access the information and get the proof and the evidence to stand this story up. It is truly one of the greatest scoops of our time.
Where you get all the HSBC documents to back it all up, that's a bit of magic.
It is 11:46. 11:49 is the time, and that astonishing story about Baroness Mone and the £29 million received from a VIP lane PPE firm that she both lobbied for and denied having any links or contact with is, I mean, truly. How many times when Boris Johnson was in charge did we? I don't know anymore how big a deal something is, because they've broken everything. They've broken the measurements, the scales upon which we used to weigh scandals. Boris Johnson smashed them to smithereens and threw them in a skip, trying to save Owen Patterson's job, lying about parties, and then lying about parties, and then lying about parties. I don't know. Mystery Hour on the way at 12, of course, if you are a little bit perturbed by this unleavened diet of political awfulness. And it is the awfulness of the small boats rhetoric that has concerned us most this morning, the irrefutable proof now that this government has been demonising people in dinghies while knowing full well that that is the only way that most genuine refugees in the world, unless they happen to come from Afghanistan, and the numbers that we've settled from Afghanistan are pretty paltry, 11,000 I think, since the Taliban took over again. 11,000 people have been settled here, absolutely pitiful numbers, huge numbers of Ukrainians, thank goodness, but not, of course, visas that will make much difference to working vacancies, job vacancies, because, you can work out why. People who do want to come here and work have been demonised, even if they are refugees. Why? I don't know. You'd have to ask Suella Braverman. Dan's in Southfields. Dan, what would you like to say?
Morning, James.
Hello, mate.
I just feel really stupid, actually, this morning. I'm really stupid. As soon as I heard that yesterday, I was listening to it. And the reason I feel stupid is because I've always I've empathised with the notion of refugees coming here.
Right.
But I was always led to believe there was a queue system, and that people that are arriving on boats were skipping the queue, which actually appealed to my sense of fairness.
Oh, wow. I don't think you should feel stupid. I think you've been told that by people you should be able to trust.
Well, yeah. Which is why
I forgot about the queue jumping element of it all. That's an exacerbation, isn't it? That's worse than simply saying, or it's an alternative. So either they're taking the mickey and they've got no right to be here at all, or they're jumping the queue that's full of other deserving refugees who are coming through the safe routes, but there aren't any safe routes.
But there is no queue. So as I say, it's so clever because it actually appeals to people who, feel that sort of injustice,
Yeah. I'm the only reason I'm reeling verbally is because I hadn't even contemplated the possibility that you existed, if you see what I mean. I am supportive of refugees. I want Britain to do more to help, or the UK to do more to help asylum seekers, but not these ones, because they are gaming the system by getting in these boats and coming here while other people are waiting in, I don't know where we thought they were waiting, but we thought they were in a refugee camp somewhere where their application might be processed. We've seen the pictures of the refugee camps in Greece or the refugee camps. They're waiting there for their applications to be processed, and these people have absconded and jumped in a dinghy. There is no process. There is no waiting list. There is no queue. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Who do you blame? And I don't mean that lazily. I mean, how do you think you were led to this place?
I blame myself, James. Honestly,
Okay,
I blame
that's
myself
fair.
because it was all staring. It was all the evidence is there. It was all. If I'd have just thought a little bit harder, it was. I knew they weren't processing places in France. There's been discussions about the need to put places there. So I don't know why I just didn't think about that next.
Because the effort put into pushing you to the place you ended up in is infinitely greater than the effort put into pushing you to the place where you've ended up into today, which is largely by accident because Suella Braverman didn't have her wits about her enough yesterday to keep the con alive. Also, Ukraine, Dan, as well, thinking about it now. Why did we have to start from scratch with the application process for Ukrainians? Why do we have to open offices or not let people do it in Calais and push them back instead to Paris and have special facilities starting from scratch, opening up in consulates and embassies? If there was a way to apply for asylum here before, why did we have to create a new system for Ukrainians?
Yeah.
Wow, Dan, thank you. And you mentioned queue jumping, which is of course profoundly pertinent to the VIP lane that companies promoted by people with contacts to the Conservative government were able to join in the pursuit of PPE contracts. So there has been queue jumping going on, but it was done by people like Michelle Mone, not the people in dinghies. Thank you, mate. Thank you. Thank you for your honesty as well, but don't beat yourself up. Seriously, we all end up believing things that, looking back, we think we probably shouldn't have believed in the first place. On this week's Full Disclosure interview podcast series, brackets, my producers are in, hosted by me, close brackets, I spoke to actor Brian Cox. Among many other things, we spoke about his latest TV project, How the Other Half Live, which is a brilliant show, and it's on Channel 5 tonight at 9 p.m. That's why we're doing a little early plug for this week's Full Disclosure, which won't be available until tomorrow. But the second part of How the Other Half Live, his investigation of epic wealth and epic poverty and how they coexist in the same universe, is on Channel 5 tonight at 9. You can get part 1 on the My 5 catch-up service. And I mean, you've got to listen to this one. I say this every week, and it's not available until tomorrow. But the man is just a born raconteur. I wonder if anyone could ever be bothered to count the number of words that I say in an episode of Full Disclosure. Because I think this is going to be close to the fewest, which I appreciate is a great plus for many of you listening. Oh, I might download that one. Apparently James said he hardly speaks at all. I think this is one of the fewest words I've said. Because there was one point where I thought, I'm going to have to speak in a minute, otherwise people are going to forget that I'm here. Here's a little preview of this week's Full Disclosure with the actor Brian Cox. We've already done the physicist. That is, as I mentioned, out tomorrow morning. Let's talk a bit about the new project, because as I say, it's so very much you, isn't it? It's so very much who you are. How the Other Half Live is. Well, you came up with the idea yourself, I think. Or partly.
It was. In fairness, it was a guy called Tom O'Brien who came to see me, and I've been thinking about, because, I mean, I love doing the show. I mean, I love. It's a great show to do, and it's a brilliantly written show by the writers and Jesse Armstrong.
Yes, we're talking about Succession.
Succession, yeah, exactly. So I loved that. I loved the show, but I was also, because I'm playing this horribly rich person, I just thought, I want to get a perspective. I need to do something with some kind of perspective on that. I don't want to be, and also I don't even though I'm so identified now, it's ridiculous. I can't go anywhere without somebody asking me to use the words FO to them.
I may do that near the end
on a constant level, which is tiring to say the least.
Yes, I'm sure.
But what happened was I don't know. It was so interesting because I realized that I needed something that was the opposite of that. And then Tom came and said, I'm thinking of doing a show about money. And immediately the light went on. Wow. I said, yes, that's the great divider. That's what we all have in common. And it's the thing we never talk about. It's the thing that nobody ever, people are ready to talk about the religion. They're ready to throw religion at you left, right, and center. And of course, we all have different religions. So it's there's a sort of bit of a discussion on that point. But with money, we all have fundamentally the same attitude. We need it to stay alive. Yeah. And there are some people who have it and some people who just do not have it and probably never will have it. And I just wanted to look at that and look at what that diversity was and how valid, we talk about it now because we're in such a bad state now with the inflation going through the roof. But I'm just concerned about the fact that we've never really attended to it. We don't, we make all these promises and we do all this thing and said, yes, we must do that. And it becomes tokenist after a while. We never really tackled the depth of the problem. And one of
which is inequality.
Which is inequality, which is deep inequality. Yeah. And, for example, the legitimization of food banks. Now food banks are regarded as, I had some MP, I can't remember of which faculty he was, but he was saying, at least they've got food banks now. And you go, well, that is nothing to be proud of.
Jacob Rees-Mogg called them uplifting.
Yes. Oh. Well, he would.
Yes, he would.
What an idiot he is. And we've less said about somebody like him and most of that party, the best.
You're right. The normalisation is the idea that...
That's right, and that's what I just couldn't bear. And I just
You played Nye Bevan, didn't you?
I did play.
Didn't he say the thing about charity being a cold heart? I think was it him. I think it was.
Well, he was one of the great inspirations. I mean, he was the man who created the National Health Service.
Yes, of course.
And we've had these amazing institutions which are the envy of the world, and we don't treat them with the respect they deserve.
Don't cherish them.
We just don't.
12 noon is the time. Mystery Hour is up next. It is an absolute belter, I have to tell you, that episode of Full Disclosure. And I know what you're thinking. You would say that, wouldn't you, James? Speaking of Jacob Rees-Mogg, as Brian Cox and I did there very, very briefly, I don't know if you've seen the Financial Times today, but you'll remember in the aftermath of Brexit, many people who knew what they were talking about warned that what is now happening would happen. It's kind of happening again, with businesses and unions now uniting to demand that Rishi Sunak stops this planned so-called bonfire of EU rules. Everyone from the TUC, the Trades Union Congress, the Institute of Directors, the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development, pretty much anybody who knows what they're talking about now warning that would be absolutely ridiculous. But forget the politics, it's time for Mystery Hour!
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Mystery Hour with James O'Brien.
4 minutes after 12 is the time. Weird day, that, eh? 2 hours already we've been together. Doesn't feel like that long, does it? Oh, does it? How long? Oh, okay. Well, this will move a bit quicker anyway, I promise. On my honour. Your weekly opportunity to achieve the sort of satisfaction not ordinarily available anywhere else on your radio dial. It's like a VIP lane of radio, except there's no 29 million quid at the end of it, however brilliant your contribution may be. If you've got a question, what needs an answer, call me now, 0345 6060973. Someone else will know the answer. There are hardly any rules. There are very few criteria for question inclusion. We try and avoid repetition, but we gave up on being too strict about that when we noticed that we weren't capable of remembering what we'd had for breakfast, never mind what we might have covered on Mystery Hour 2 years, 2 months, or even 2 weeks ago. There wasn't one last week, so expect a little bit of a logjam. And don't look anything up. You're not allowed to consult Google or any other form of reference, because somebody listening will know the answer, and we can't wait to hear from them. That's pretty much it, except to remind you that there is a prize now on Mystery Hour. There is... I got asked about Mystery Hour on Celebrity Mastermind. Did I tell you this, Keith? No, it was amazing. Clive Myrie wanted to know more about it, and... I don't know if it'll make the edit or not, but it was quite a moment when you think back to how this began as a fairly silly diversion designed to allow us to spend an hour not talking about the news on the day of a by-election when you're not allowed to talk about politics or by-elections. We just came up with this all those many, many moons ago, and now not only has it spawned nearly decades of entertainment, but it's its very own board game, and it gets a mention on Mars. I'm sitting in the mastermind chair talking about Mystery Hour. There are moments in my life, I've got to tell you, in the last few years where I can't quite believe the direction that things have gone in, but that is absolutely up there. Miss Pardon, Mystery? Yeah, all right, fine. Bum, 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 bum. Special subject, Mystery Hour. Special subject, Brexit benefits, Clive, please. That'll be on over the Christmas period, so yeah, you might, then again, you might not want to watch it. But there is a board game, and it's actually brilliant. I gloss over this usually, but now that Christmas is coming up, I should tell you how it works. What I love about it is that there's a question, right, which has come up on Mystery Hour at some point in the past. So the more you listen, the bigger the head start you've got over your family and friends if you decide to play over the Christmas period. There's a question, and then there's 2 answers, one of which is correct and one of which is not correct. And the one that's not correct often came up on the show as well. Because, you know, when we reject we don't do that as much as we used to do, actually, do we? But we used to take answers without paying that much attention to whether they were right or wrong or not, because sometimes the wrong answers would be so funny that the whole appeal of Mystery Hour often hinged on the wrong answers as much as the right answers. So there's 2 questions there, 2 answers there to every question. But then, and this is the beauty of it, then there's the third one as well, which you make up yourself. So you get a bit of time at the beginning of the game to go through the cards you've been dealt. Everyone starts with a handful of question cards, and you come up with a false question yourself. So one of my favourites was, why don't icebergs float away? And you've got the obvious answer, then you've got a feasible wrong answer, but then you've got one you make up yourself, you know, or whatever the question is. And if you can get people to think that the one you made up is the right answer, then you're going to win the game. Even if you're not good at other elements of it, which involve guessing what's the right answer on other people's questions. If you can get people, you get double points if people choose your wrong answer to the question. And then the rest of it, the board is just the ladder. So you just move places according to how many points you get. You get points for fooling people. You get double points for fooling people with the one that you made up yourself. And you get points for guessing the correct answer when it's somebody else's go. And I can categorically tell you that it is fun for all the family. It really is. Including, my friend Scott found a way of playing it with his little girl, which I think they just do the 2 questions. They don't bother making up the false one. So you just have to guess what's the right answer out of 2 choices. So it's 50-50. And the fun of that as well is considerable. All in a box, all for 20 quid. You can get it at mysteryhour.co.uk or in all sorts of places. Some that you'd expect, and some perhaps that you wouldn't. Tom says, stop waffling, man, and get on with Mystery Hour. That's very cruel, Tom, because you are denying people the opportunity to get hold of their very own Mystery Hour board game in time for Christmas. But you don't need to buy it. Make the best contribution of the day to today's Mystery Hour, and you win one. Terms and conditions can be found at lbc.co.uk. So there it is. We're off. Mystery Hour, as featured on Mastermind, brackets, although it may not make the edit, close brackets. Kath's in York. Kath, question or answer?
It's a question, James. Hiya.
Carry
I'm
on,
a bit
Kath.
nervous, so please bear with me.
It's only me.
A few weeks ago, I
Yes.
was cooking myself an egg butty, a fried egg butty. I don't have them very often.
Very nice.
And I was thinking, when my parents ran a B&B in Scotland, they used to get local farmers, and a lot of the time there were double yolkers.
Yes, of course.
And I haven't had a double yoker for years. And I was just wondering, and I've been thinking about it ever since, is it possible to get, like, twin hatchlings?
So
Or is it
one egg
literally-
with two chicks in it?
Yeah. Did they ever hatch out? Did they go beyond being a double yolk, egg in your frying pan or whatever I've used it. I'm thinking maybe one will eat the other, you know what I mean, absorb the other, and maybe it just isn't possible.
That's a good question.
I'm a bit ignorant on eggs anyway, because I don't really get them, if that makes sense.
What do you mean you don't get eggs?
Well, like fertilisation. Well, sometimes you find one with a foot inside or something like that. Not
You
that
found
you
a
that
foot
many,
in an
but-
egg?
Well, you know, you get that. Well, maybe not a foot, a veiny bit, a red bit. You know where you think.
Yeah, I mean,
"Ooh."
there's a big difference between a bit of blood in an egg and a foot.
Yeah, but
Kath, you've never
well,
found a
maybe
foot.
there is. Well, like I said, I was ignorant on it.
You didn't say
Okay,
you're not being ignorant. You've never found a foot in an egg.
Well, probably not a
No.
foot, no, but a red veiny bit. Where
Just
you think,
stop
"Ooh, that
it
looks
now.
like
There's
it's
a big
morphing."
yes. We've all found a sort of red veiny bit, but where did you get a foot from?
Well, probably overreactive imagination and panic.
It's
at
all the
being on
excitement.
radio.
It's all the excitement of
Yeah,
being on the
that's what it
radio. I mean, it's an odd
Well,
manifestation
it's
of
talking to you,
excitement. Some people stutter. Some people forget their thread. You invented a foot in an egg.
All right, then a red, horrible, yucky looking bit.
Yes. So
but the double
can
yolk was
chickens
the
have twins? Can one egg
Well,
produce
yeah,
two
until they
chicks?
get through to being a hatchling. I mean,
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I mean, I watch Spring Watch and things like that.
Yeah.
But I've never seen two chicks come up. So I think it might be a really dumb question.
You can get.
So I'm
It's
just
definitely not a dumb question. You can get double yolk. I think Asda now do double yolkers. You can actually buy a box of double yolkers. You know.
Well, like I said, when we lived in Scotland, we used to get loads. It was a regular.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get regular, but I haven't had one in years.
They check
So I
it with a
just
lamp.
think about
They check it with a lamp in the hatching in the shed. They can see. They
Oh,
shine a
right.
lamp through the egg, and they can
Oh.
see whether it's got two yolks or not. So there must be they must have done some sort of
They've done
genetic
something
selection.
already.
Yeah. All right, I'll find out for you. Can eggs have
well, thank
twins?
you very
Can
much.
chickens
I
have twins?
appreciate it.
Can chickens
And I
have
love the
twins?
show. Yeah.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
Kath. You're on.
All right, thanks, James.
And has
Bye-bye.
anyone ever found a foot in an egg? 03456060973. Thank you, Kath. Tim's in Tunbridge. Tim, question or answer?
It's a question.
Carry on.
I have a cordless vacuum cleaner, and it kept cutting out, and
Yeah.
I took it to the dealer
Right.
shop, and I said, "Look, what's this? It keeps cutting out." And
Yeah.
I ended up hoovering the shop floor for full 5 minutes, and it didn't cut out, which was great. But the point was, I looked in it has a drum, and you can see all the dust and things that collects in it.
Hmm.
And I want to know, why is dust always grey?
Well, it's not, is it?
It is.
Well, it isn't.
It is. I had a whole drum full of it.
Yeah, it's
And the man
almost
in the shop
always
was
grey. It's almost
No.
always grey. But if you hoovered, I don't know, if you hoovered up, if you
I
spilt
hoovered
some
up his shop
flour.
floor and I hoovered up his shop floor. It was blue, and
Yeah.
it was still. There was no blue in there. It was grey.
No, I mean, you're right up to a point. I'm just saying it is possible to conceive of circumstances where dust wouldn't be grey. For example, if you were hoovering on a sandstone rock.
Oh, well, then that will clog it up because That's why it will. That's
it'd be
why it
orange.
kept cutting out because I've been hoovering up the wrong things.
It's.
but
I
if you
mean,
run your
it's
finger
actually
along the
quite a
top-
good. I like this question actually.
Thank you. It's really nice.
It
Well,
is
when
really
you run
because
your finger along the top of.
That's grey.
Something. Yeah, it's grey.
well, I think a
Where's
large
the punishment?
proportion of dust is skin, isn't it?
No.
It is. Yeah, it is shed skin. Did you not know that?
I know it is that, but I mean, then that means we'd be the amount of dust that I was picking up would be skinless, wouldn't we?
But I mean,
We
it's the
wouldn't- we'd be fine. We
defining
wouldn't have
colour. A dull colour is going to overcome other colours. You mean if you put it under a microscope, there'd probably be specks in it, wouldn't there?
No, it'd be grey.
No, I think it's going to be to do with the spectrum. It's when you mix up lots and lots of colours. Hang on, I'm getting it.
No.
No, I am. Think about paint.
No, because...
Black.
No, you've been talking all the time, mate.
Yeah, I know. Hello, welcome to the James O'Brien experience. So I want you to imagine you've got some paint. Ready?
Oh, that was my question last week and I didn't get on.
You've got some red paint and you've got some blue paint. You mix them together. What do you get?
Deep purple.
Correct. Good band. Now add some yellow.
Yes, you'll get, what should we say? A light, very light plum.
Okay, now a bit of black.
Oh, dear.
Carry on. Keep it in your mind. Keep it in your mind, Tim. Don't let it go. Look into my eyes. Keep it in your mind.
Burgundy.
Yeah, all right. Now add some white.
Yeah. Then you're going to go to pink.
No, you're not going to pink, man. You've got red, green, blue, black, white and green and pink and yellow and orange and ochre and...
I have, I ran a graphic design agency. I know my colours.
Fine, but eventually... red and yellow and pink and green, orange and purple and blue. Eventually, it's going to be grey.
And they say no, and they think I can see a car crash.
I can see a rainbow.
Oh, is it a rainbow?
I can see a rainbow.
No.
Eventually, it's going to be grey. That will be the answer. I can tell already you're not going to accept it from me, but eventually the answer will be that if you mix together all the colours, it's grey.
No, because every object in the universe is black.
Well, now you're just being silly. It's 12:15. Why is dust always grey? And... can chickens have twins?
Mystery Hour on LBC with James O'Brien.
19 minutes after 12 is the time. Can chickens have twins? And why is dust grey? I love both of those questions. In fact, they're pretty good Mystery Hour introductions, aren't they? Because you'll be sitting there go, I don't know. Or you might be going, that's who everyone knows chickens can't have twins or chickens can have twins. If my peacock laid an egg in your garden, Keith, who would it belong to? I'll tell you later. Jane's in Brora in the Highlands. Jane, question or answer?
Answer.
Carry on.
Can chickens have twins?
No, that's a question.
Yeah, no, I'm going to give you the answer.
Oh, sorry, carry on.
The answer is yes, they can.
But
they generally don't.
No, well, no, but the same with humans.
Yeah, it's a little bit more tricky, I suppose.
Why?
So, yes, you can get a double yolker, and yes, both of those yolks can be fertilised. So, in theory, you've got the right initial ingredients for twins. But as they develop, the little air bubble that's in the egg that keeps the chick alive as it starts to hatch is too small. It's really just designed. It's a chick Airbnb for one. So they can both develop, and on an odd occasion they will both hatch, but generally either one hatches and one dies, or they both die.
So, but they can occasionally make it, you mean?
Yeah.
That's lovely. Qualifications?
I'm going for a double qualification. I am a keeper of poultry.
Yes.
And I'm a wild bird rehabber.
That's wild bird rehabber?
Yeah. So if you're out and about and you find, I don't know, a barn owl with a broken wing.
Or a goose with a broken foot.
Or a peacock in the wrong... No, we don't want peacock.
Why not? What's wrong with peacocks? It's a bit peacockish.
I love peacocks.
Oh, okay.
Love peacocks.
Right.
Love peacocks. So if you find that, most of my time is spent raising baby birds, so in chick season, nests of baby birds come in, and we raise, so bird rehabber.
Pretty strong. Do you want to mention the place so that people can show their support for it or not? It's up to you entirely.
Yeah, absolutely, I'd love to. It's Blue Highlands Bird Rescue.
Where you rescue birds.
Exactly, that's what it says on the tin.
It's including the title. It's lovely stuff, a beautiful qualification as well. Thank you, Jane. Have a round of applause.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. That was a lovely answer. Suella Braverman probably disapproves of that, offering, taking up poorly birds and helping them. You're practically bird refugees. Hazel was staying in Scotland. It's because I made so many new friends yesterday with my coverage of the of that judicial decision handed down. Hazel's in Kilsyth. Hazel, question or answer?
I've got a question.
Carry on.
So I'm watching the World Cup at the moment.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering why some countries on their score ticker would have they are the way that they would say the name of their country rather than the English way. So, for example, Spain yesterday had ESP, which I'd assume would be España.
Yeah.
But Germany wouldn't have DEU for Deutschland.
Because it's the German team.
Yeah. So they had GER.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, I thought you were asking a silly question then. I was getting ready to be all cocky and condescending, Hazel, for the first time in my life. But but no, what? So what do Germans call Germany? They call it Deutschland, don't they?
Yeah. So you would expect then if it was
to be DEU,
like España, DEU, yeah.
Because ESP for España. I mean, it's on the board.
Switzerland just played as well, and they were SUI,
which is
so
Swiss.
Yeah, I think
Swiss.
so. I'm not too sure of that one. Yeah.
Germany, the football team. Is the? I mean, maybe I don't. I'm not going to get there. I'm just annoyed that I don't know the answer to this because it seems like we should. You're on. Okay, you're on. Why do? I mean, it's. Yes, no, thank you. It may be that Germany. Can you think of another one? I think Germany is the question. Actually, it's not the. Because all the other countries...
Why are they not DEU?
Yeah. But anyway, it doesn't matter. You don't have to. So what's going on there? Spain is ESP. Germany is GER, which is an English speaker we don't understand because you can see why España would be ESP, but Germans don't call Germany, do they? So, anyway, we'll find out. Thank you, Hazel. Karen is in East Kilbride. Someone's messing with me again now. Are we going to take every call from Scotland? Is this going to be a Scottish mystery hour? The first call wasn't from Scotland, was it? Although it was from Yorkshire, but Kath had her parents had a B&B in Scotland. So so far, it's an entirely Scottish phone in. The number you need is 0345. Tim in Tunbridge, ruin it for everybody. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. Karen is in East Kilbride. Karen, question or answer?
Question.
Go on.
How do dogs know what time it is?
Check their watch.
My dog knows in the morning to wake me up between just about 7 o'clock for her breakfast.
Well, she's hungry.
And at 5 o'clock at night, every night at 5 o'clock, she comes and she hits me at that time for dinner.
Well, there's your answer.
But how does she know it's 5 o'clock?
She doesn't know it's 5 o'clock. She knows it's tea time. Her body is telling her. It's the level of...
Doesn't do it before then.
Well, no, because...
I also had a dog years ago that used to always know when it was lunchtime and my mum was coming home. Not for lunch or anything.
No, I do believe it. I do believe that dogs have a sixth sense in some ways.
Yeah.
But the answer to your question is it's not the time. The dog doesn't know it's 5 o'clock. The dog knows it's dinner time.
Yeah, but is there has there got to be a length of time before they come for dinner?
No, it's a level of hunger. If you started feeding the dog at 4 o'clock every day, after a week, the dog would come and hit you at 4 o'clock, not at 5 o'clock. If you started feeding the dog at 6 o'clock, you'd have a week of being hit at 5 o'clock, but you'd have to get to the end of that and then start feeding the dog at 6 o'clock, and then the dog would come and get you at 6 o'clock.
Right, well, the interesting point is when the clocks go forward,
yes,
he gets confused.
Well,
but when the clocks went back, she still comes at 5 o'clock. Got you.
Yeah, you know you haven't. I'm just thinking. How dare you? How dare you sit? I mean, first of all, do I believe you?
You don't have a dog?
Yes, I do have a dog, and I'm just trying to remember. And I've got 3 cats at the moment as well. When the weather's cold, it's like a flipping safari park in our house. I have to be careful where I'm. Also, I'm going through that thing now of turning all the lights off because I'm not the electricity board. I've turned into my dad, so I turn all the lights off, and then I tread on a cat. It's getting ridiculous, frankly. You do. So we did the dog. The clock went back recently, didn't it, or forward, or one or the other, and everyone was confused. They were coming for their food at 4 o'clock. Were they?
She was still coming at 5 o'clock, but when the clocks go forward, we always notice that confuses us.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. All right.
There you go.
No, it's not quite. I should have done a watchdog joke here. I can't believe I missed the opportunity. She's a watchdog. Ask me again. Let's pretend. I'll do this as a clip. Karen is in East Kilbride. Karen, question or answer?
Question.
Yeah.
How do dogs know what time of day it is?
They're watchdogs.
No.
I got laughter in the background. Get in. Yes.
Tim told me to ask the question.
I'll try and get you an answer. Oh,
okay,
dear.
okay.
Thank you. You take care. Thank you. Gareth is in Chesterless Street in County Durham, so it's staying up there, but not quite up there. Question or answer, Gareth?
It's an answer, mate.
Carry on. What was the name of the nice lady who asked the question about the football? Can you remember?
Oh, I wasn't listening because I've gone away from the radio while I've been waiting to speak to you on the phone.
All right, don't worry. Well, in Kilsyth, what was her name? Hazel in Kilsyth. I just like to keep proper notes, otherwise I come across like an amateur, and I've got to choose a winner. Question or answer, Gareth?
It's an answer.
Carry on.
Dust. It isn't grey, but we perceive it as being grey. You were pretty much right when you were talking about the mix of colours. So if you have dust that's just come from one thing, say you grind in some white foam or something, and you get this dust that comes off, it'll look white because all the dust that's there is from the same thing. But dust in your house is from many different things, and when you mix lots of different colours together, you generally get an average grey colour. If you think about,
of course,
if you think about your television, it's RGB. It's got 3 colours.
Mm-hmm.
You can make grey out of those 3 colours. It's an exact same amount of each 3 colours.
Oh yeah.
So you perceive it as being grey. It's just the way your eyes perceive the refractions. It averages it all out.
So the colours all sort of merge into one, as it were, and that one is grey. I like it. I thought so, but you've done it more cleverly than I did. Question or answer?
Question or answer? Do I have to answer?
What do I mean, question or answer? Qualifications.
Oh, my qualifications, I've got a degree in photography, video and digital imaging.
That'll do nicely.
So we deal with colours and mixing them all up.
Have a round of applause.
Yeah. Thank you.
Very nicely done. I shall just write down your name next to the grey dust question. And they're still looking for a winner. 12:28. Squeeze in one more, and then we'll head towards the news, and then more Mystery Hour questions and answers. Tristan is in Bury St Edmunds. Tristan, question or answer?
It's a question.
Carry on.
Why has denim clothing always been mostly blue, whilst clothing made from other fabrics has always been a wider range of different colours, sort of reds and greens and browns and stuff like that, whereas denim stuff has always been mostly blue?
I know this.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I do.
Right.
It's because it stays blue. There's something about indigo that gets into the fabric, and if you did it a different colour, it would fade a lot more quickly. In fact, you know that, don't you? Because your jeans, unless you buy stonewashed jeans or faded jeans, they keep their colour really, really well.
Yeah.
Maybe not as well as black, I don't know. There may have been reasons at the time what was available and what wasn't available, but it's the chemistry of the dye acts on the fabric in a way that keeps the colour more than any other colour. Back in the day, back in Nîmes or wherever it was made.
Right, okay. And why doesn't it affect other fabrics like cotton T-shirts? And
it
stuff
probably
like that,
does. I don't know that. Right. That's not what you asked. I've answered your question. Don't be greedy.
All right.
That is definitely it. Qualifications, I think it might have come up before.
Right, okay. Right. And you were a clothes seller anyway, so...
I was a clothes seller, although we certainly didn't sell denim in Aquascutum of Regent Street, Tristan. I mean, how dare you? Round of applause for me, please. And Tristan's name is on the list. It's a good... I mean, I may have got some of the details slightly wrong, but it's to do with the dye. The dye. Amelia Cox is here now with your headlines.
Mystery Hour on LBC with James O'Brien. Call 0345 6060 973.
It is 12:34. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where Mystery Hour continues. Lee's in Durham. Lee, question or answer?
It's an answer, James, and I do hope you're a lot easier to convince than your research team. Wow.
Yeah, well, we can't be faffing about, Lee. We get all sorts of flotsam and jetsam ringing in. Seriously.
It's the letters you see on the football.
Oh, yes.
And it is quite simple in whoever owned the original right to the broadcast, then decides. So what you get a lot of channels that piggyback off others. So rather than having 100 cameramen in the stadium, you might have an EU cameraman who puts it as ESP, and then ITV or Sky or other medias would then piggyback off their broadcast.
Okay.
You're going to challenge me like your team.
I'm not going to challenge you. I don't understand why Spain would be España and Germany would be Ger.
Because in Europe, in Europe they typically just call Spain ESP.
But why?
That's just the way Europeans called Spain.
But
Europe's bigger than England, so when we buy it, we typically stand out.
So what do Spaniards call Germany?
What does Spanish call Germany? Deutschland. It'll be DEU.
Oh, well, then you've just talked yourself out of a round of applause then, because why is Germany GER?
The GER will be the UK. We're feeding it. We're changing it.
But then why are we changing Spain?
We would change Spain to SPA.
No, we wouldn't. It's ESP. Watching the World Cup now, Spain is ESP and Germany is GER.
I don't know, but what I mean is we don't change it. So if we've...
I'm going to judge from the confidence with which you're speaking. I think I'm being a bit dozy here.
So if ITV have got a little... I don't know why it has to be little. A cameraman in the stadium, it'll come through as SPA. If they've said, can I nick your feed, it'll come through as ESP, because it's the original feed that's being broadcast. They're just stealing the cable.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think I understand all of this, but I don't understand why Germany is GER, and pretty much every other country we can think of is the first three letters of what they call themselves.
So Germany's GER because we've changed it.
Yeah, but why haven't we changed Spain?
Because we didn't have the feed.
But in the World Cup, no, I'm beginning to lose my confidence that I'm being dozy here. Look, we are watching the World Cup. It's Spain versus Germany, right?
Right, okay.
And it's ESP. It's ESP versus GER. How has that happened?
But we haven't done that, though. The question was getting confused between them. It's the always... It would have shown, if it's our cameraman, it would be GER versus SPA.
But the Spanish call Germany Alemania.
No, it would just be Deutschland. It's just always been Deutschland.
But it isn't, is it? It's GER.
It's if it was their feed, it would be DEU versus ESP.
I don't care whose feed it is. If we watch the World Cup in England this year, Spain is ESP and Germany is GER, which means if they were to play each other, it would be ESP versus GER.
It'd be ESP. No.
Yes.
But it wouldn't be.
Why not?
It's whoever's got the original.
But it doesn't matter who's got... This is what we're watching this week. Spain is ESP and Germany is GER.
No.
It is. That was the whole point of the question.
No, I think the lady was getting confused.
I think one of you is confused. I'm 52% you, 48% You're not getting a round of applause, but we'll part because I'm probably going to eat humble pie 10 minutes
down.
We'll
leave it on the board. And
I'm leaving it on the... What are your qualifications?
I'll take it later. I did a media and performing broadcast when I was younger.
Right, yeah. Well, I'll apologise now if I've unfairly maligned you, but I'm not having that. Not yet. Milo, I beg your pardon, is in Cookham. Milo, question or answer?
Answer. That guy couldn't be more wrong if he tried.
That's what I thought, but don't be unkind. Go on.
So, if it's in a UK broadcast, if it's recognisable, still, like ESP has an SP and it looks a bit like Spain. So they leave it. Whereas if it's Greece, which would start with HEL if you were speaking in the Greek tongue, it's completely unrecognisable as Greece, as is Serbia, which would be HOV.
Yes.
So if it's a bit recognisable, they'll leave it, and if it's unrecognisable, they change it, and that is the answer.
So hang on a minute. I know this voice. Do I?
No.
Why have you gone for... Where did Milo come from?
I don't know. I am Milo. I'm Milo.
No, you're not.
I am. I'm a Smilo Milo.
No, you're not. Well, now I'm right, aren't I?
It's question or answer?
Yeah. You're Chris Evans and I claim £5.
Okay, qualification?
You very kindly took me and Steve Allen out for lunch last week and the laughter is still echoing in my ears. God, that was close. I've never met you
before in your life. I have no idea what you're talking
about. Qualifications, TV legend? I don't know. What are you going to say? Qualifications?
No, we did it on our show yesterday.
But, round of applause for Milo. Milo! Well, anyway, thank you. Thanks again for lunch. I had so much fun. And Steve got home safely, more importantly than anything else.
Yeah, he's national treasure.
Isn't he just? Thank you, mate.
Goodbye.
See you soon. Oh, they nearly got through that. He's done it before and I haven't noticed, by the way. Chris Evans, of course, being the finest broadcaster of his and many other generations. Liz is in Stoke-on-Trent. Liz, question or answer?
It's a question, James. I can't believe I'm talking to you. I hope you're well.
Would you be talking to me? We just had Chris Evans on the line. That's a lot more exciting. I am very well, Liz, and thank you for your kind words.
Thank you. I've been trying to get through with this question so many weeks. What it is, I was listening to an audio thriller the other day, and the coroner said that the flies that invade dead bodies...
Oh, flipping heck.
Arrive within 25 minutes.
Right.
It didn't expand, but I suppose it's...
so it helps you. It helps you at time of death.
Indoors.
Helps you
it was
identify.
within 25 minutes, and I'm wondering, where do they hang... I think they call botflies, but I'm not sure. Where do they hang out in the meantime? Do they are they in nests underground? In little holes, just where are they? Because that is their only job, I think, is to invade cadavers. So,
well, no, hang on. It's not. Is it a certain type of fly?
I think yes. It's the first one that always arrives after death, and
right.
I think they call
botfly. I think they fly around, don't they, looking for dead bodies?
I don't know.
No, I don't either.
Because you never see them in insect books or nature books, to identify, this is a so-and-so. So if they are flying around, would we recognise them? Well, that's my question. Where are they?
Where are the cadaver flies? Are they called cadaver flies?
I don't know.
Oh.
I think they're called botflies. I'm not sure. I mean, maybe they are flying around, but we wouldn't know.
No, we want to know.
Yes, please.
Right, you're on.
Thank you.
No, was it worth the wait?
Oh, absolutely, sweetie, yes.
I have to say that your exuberance when you came on was slightly at odds with the morbidity of your question, Liz. I was not expecting dead bodies when you were so kind to express how excited you were to be on the programme.
Oh, right. Well, I'm excited over everything. Life's an adventure.
You can say that again. You can say that. We'll soon knock that out of you if you keep listening, Liz.
Oh, I've been listening to you for years.
Oh, Lord. Well, wonderful. Even more of a compliment there. Thank you. Let's find out. The flies that turn up at a dead body within 25 minutes of expiry. Where are they the rest of the time? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. Bill's in Bristol. Bill, question or answer?
I got an answer for you, James.
Carry on, Bill.
It's the dogs telling the time.
Oh, yes.
It's based around smell.
Yes.
They did a study. There was a guy would go to work every day 8 till 5. So I don't know, it gets back 5 o'clock, and at 5 o'clock every day, the dog would jump on the sofa and look out the window for 5 minutes before he got back. Basically, when the guy would leave, he'd sort of leave his scent, and over the 8 hours, it would gradually fade throughout the day, and the dog would detect when it gets to that sort of level, oh, he's going to be home soon. So I suppose there's a smell. There's some constant smell. Maybe it'd be a dog food bowl. He knows if he's
and when it reaches a certain level, then and why would then the dog have a different reaction to the clocks going forward from the clocks going back? Probably because the gap between the two feeds.
I don't know. They didn't cover that in the program.
No, I don't. And I'm just trying to work out whether your answer is comprehensive enough, because it is, isn't it? I mean, how does a dog know what time it is? By the way that the smell. The signature smell changes, whatever it is. It might be the lingering smell of the owner, or it might be the smell. So now it's time. I get fed when this happens to my nose.
Yeah,
is what the dog is saying to itself.
The owner's routine is going to change according to that clock. So I suppose then, would it reset that way for the dog?
Qualifications, I saw it on the telly.
Saw it on the telly.
Nothing.
Do I get extra points for alliteration, Bill in Bristol?
No. Good call, though. No. Well, I mean, I like an alliteration, as you know, but we've got Zach in Portsmouth on the line, and that would just be discriminating against him, because we're never going to... Well, I suppose he could ring in from Zeebrugge, but no. And we've already had Tim in Tunbridge, as Keith points out, so no, absolutely not Bill in Bristol. One day. I've been saying this since I started this job. We'll do a show where you're only allowed on if you alliteration for your name and the place where you are, but all you get is a round of applause, Bill.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. 12:45, very nearly.
Mystery Hour with James O'Brien. This is LBC.
12:48 already, crikey. Eggs, yes. Dust, yes. Countries, yes. Although there might be a steward's inquiry coming up on that one. Dogs and time, yes. Jeans, yes, I got that one right. And flies, no. Bob's in Durham. Question or answer?
Hi, James. Question, please.
Carry on, Bob.
Okay, so it's coming into winter, so we've recently changed the duvet on the bed.
Yeah, we do that as well. We got a double bubble. Have you got? We got two duvets that knit together, that zip up together, and you take one off in summer and then zip it back on again in winter.
No, not that posh.
Okay.
So
what do you mean posh? It's not. Anyway, carry on. You've got two duvets. I've got kind of one duvet that breaks in half. It's not. You're posher than me. Go on.
Maybe. Go on. Right. So what I want to know is, all the duvets are rated in togs.
Yes.
I want to know what a tog is. Is it a measurement of the thickness of the material? Is it its heat resistance? Is it just something that's randomly made up by duvet manufacturers? What is it?
It's the warmth, isn't it?
I know if I buy a 10-tog duvet, it's going to be more warm than a 5 one.
Yeah.
But I don't know what a tog is.
It doesn't even mean weight either. It's different from weight. I can't remember this.
Do you know?
No, I didn't know. We've had it before. I think it's in the board game, actually.
Is it?
I think it is.
Rubbish. Well, I'm not going to win a board game with it.
I must get a board game for Milo, actually, to say thank you for that lovely lunch that we had last week. No, it's not coming. You're on. Yeah, what is it? It's not an acronym, is it? It doesn't stand for like...
I don't know.
Thermal, optimal gubbins. Thermal optimal gubbins, Bob.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely that, Bob.
I should have thought of that.
I'll get you. Oh, you're on. Let's squeeze it in quick. What does tog mean on duvets? 0345 6060 973. Bill's in Harlow. Bill, question or answer?
It's an answer.
Carry on, Bill.
The 3-letter names...
Oh, Steward's inquiry. Steward's inquiry underway. Steward's inquiry.
...are all defined by the IOC.
Yeah.
And any affiliate body uses them.
But the IOC might have employed the criteria that Milo described when deciding what to do, no?
No, not really. The IOC came up with a huge list of names.
And FIFA is affiliated to the International Olympic Committee.
Affiliated, yes, to it, because there are some amazing ones that you can have a look. They're quite easy to find. I find them because I'm an international cycling official, so we have to use the 3-letter name in defining where riders and officials come from.
Yeah, all right, you're on. Qualifications, okay. International cycling official.
Yeah, and I can also answer your tog one.
No, you can't. That's not how... Whoa. I don't come round your place of work and just jump on my grifter and start bombing around a track while they're trying to have a race. So don't you come to mine and start ripping up the rule book, Bill.
Oh, no, but this is...
No. Round of applause. It is in the game as well. That one is as well, I think. It's all the more reasons to buy the Mystery app. Okay. Oh dear. 12.52 is the time. I never had a grifter. Always wanted one. I won the premium bonds when I was about 12. Got 100 quid. I bought Tin Can Alley and a drop-handled racing bike from Woolworths. Never had a grifter though. Nirav is in Windsor. Nirav, question or answer?
Answer, please.
Carry on.
Okay, I mean, you should have been in my industry, chemistry and pigments and dyes, because you were so right about
I was pretty
indigo.
close, right? Thank you very much. But you're going to go a little bit further. You're going to go a bit further.
Yeah. So the thing is that indigo, as the name suggests, well, indigo comes from indicum in Latin.
Yes.
Means that origins from India, which was about 4,000 years ago. And then you always use in blue, ceramic, and mosaic and stuff like that until the yarn dyeing came along. And yarn dyeing was a change of things that Germany brought to the world early 19th century.
Yes.
And then indigo latches on into the fibers of the yarn, a white yarn basically, in such a way that it penetrates the upper surface and it goes into the molecular structure of the yarn. So therefore, it's called the yarn dyeing process, and indigo is the best choice as the dye which has the least wash fastest. So that no matter how many washes you do, it'll fade, but it'll never leave the fiber.
And that's why they favoured it for denim.
And they favoured it for denim. And therefore, because of the fading effect that it can give you, if you increase the percentage of the dye inside the dye baths, it can change the percentages. So you can have denims of different different ratios of the blue, basically of indicum or indigo.
Beautiful answer.
So,
What are your qualifications, Nirav? What was your field?
I have done my specialized in chemistry, and I've been with the industry of pigments and dyes for 27 years now.
Well, blimey, that'll do. Round of applause for Nirav. What's your favourite colour? What's your favourite?
Indigo.
Is it indigo? I was going to say it's a beautiful colour, isn't it? It kind of goes down. I like I've gone a bit Alan Partridge now, but you are like, what's your favourite colour? I really like orange. I'm mad about orange. I don't know why. I can see why Harry Krishners wear orange. It's a soothing colour, orange. I find it soothing, but it's not good for dyeing, is it? Because it fades quite quickly, I imagine.
Yes, wash fastness is high. But mine is favorite is turquoise blue, and that's what I've been into the industry.
Yeah, I can see why. And Greece, of course, the turquoise blue that you get out there on the rooftops and stuff like that is beautiful. It's a bit of a celebrity special today. Thank you, Nirav. It's a bit of a celebrity special today. I'm just going to check with my colleagues on the countries. Do you know that you just hung up on the multiple Olympic gold medal winning Matthew Pinsent? Hello? Do you know that you just hung up on Matthew Pinsent, the one of the most successful British Olympians of all time? Who you did? He's just messaged me to say that bloke is correct. Your team just hung up on me. Well, if you're using a false name like Evans is, Pinsent, then you've only got yourself to blame for not having your credentials recognised. But anyway, that was confirming that I think it was Bill was correct about how the countries are given the name. Yeah, but you hung up on Matthew Pinsent. You can't be hanging up on Matthew Pinsent. He's Matthew Pinsent. Olympic legend. Dan's in Eastbourne. Dan, question or answer?
I've got an answer for you, my friend.
Carry on, Dan.
It's to do with the flies and cadavers, I'm afraid.
Everyone's having their lunch now. Let's make it snappy.
Okay, basically the flies aren't just specifically box flies. They're various insects that are around in the environment, and they're actually attracted by the smell. The body, once it's died, secretes very subtle smells within anywhere between half an hour and 3 hours, depending on temperature conditions, etc. And it's actually the smell of the body that attracts the flies. They're not actually just hiding in the body or hiding around.
No, they're knocking around the place doing their thing. They're just, and then they catch a whiff. They catch a whiff on the wind, and they're in like Flynn.
They're in like Flynn, I'm afraid. That is exactly what it is. And obviously, hotter countries quicker, colder countries not so quickly. But yes, and that's why within 12 hours the body's more or less consumed.
Oof. Qualifications? I had dread to ask.
Not mine, my wife. She's head of mortuary and post-mortem services for an NHS trust.
Well, you live and learn, Dan, eh? And she brings her work home with her, does she?
Well, she doesn't. I hope not, no, but we do. Unfortunately, I am party to some of these conversations.
I meant that she talks about it when she comes home, but I realised halfway through the sentence how that could be construed, and I thought, in for a penny, in for a pound, I'll stick with it anyway. Of course, she doesn't bring her work home with her literally. That would probably be illegal. That would certainly be illegal.
She's the worst person to watch any type of crime.
I was about to say, if you're watching Cold Case Killers or whatever it's called, she'll be sitting there going, "Oh my God, that's ridiculous."
They wouldn't do this. They wouldn't do that.
I love it.
But it's to do with smell.
Round of applause for Dan. A beautiful answer.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. Leslie is in Hayling Island. Leslie, question or answer?
Question, James. I'm going to lighten the mood slightly.
I mean, to be fair, considering we were talking about corpses, it ended on quite a chirpy and cheerful comedy note, didn't it?
I've got you a chirpy one.
Go on then.
I've made your producer laugh. You know when we do something wrong or we create a faux pas, we utter under our breath, "Oh, Gordon Bennett."
Yes.
I want to know who Gordon Bennett is, does he ever exist? I've made a laugh, but I haven't got a clue.
I know this.
Oh, good, tell me.
It's come up before. This must be in the board game as well, which is available at mysteryhour.co.uk and via Amazon. And John Lewis. Sheila Fogarty said, do you know this?
I don't know this.
Journalism answer.
Go on.
He was a newspaper proprietor who was a bit like, imagine Donald Trump before he turned evil. He was a very exuberant, sort of rich, and he was well known as a bit of a lad. And
he being Gordon Bennett.
Gordon Bennett, yeah. Early 20th century, New York newspaper proprietor, and his name became a byword for being surprised because it'd be like a Barnum type figure or someone who would be coming up with great wizard wheezes, and so you'd go instead of going Gore Blimey, you'd go right. Gordon Bennett.
Oh, right. So he did exist then?
Yes, he definitely existed.
All right. Fair enough, James.
Thank you very much.
I'll give you a round of applause.
Thank you, Leslie. Blimey, that was loud for one person. Thank you, Leslie. Take care. I've got to choose a winner. It's going to be tricky. I think I'm going to choose the lady that asked about the eggs. Or, no, the lady that answered about the eggs. Or the lady that asked about the eggs. Oh, no.
It's Christmas. Give them both whatever you give them.
I don't know if I'm allowed to. There's going to be a run on them now. It's Christmas. And what? It's Kath or Jane, isn't it? Kath asked, Jane answered. Jane with the bird. I'm giving it to Jane with the bird sanctuary. That's what. Yeah, that's the one. Well done, Jane. You win this week's Mystery Hour board game. That's it from me for another
Scrooge.
day. What do you mean, Scrooge?
Well, you could have broken the rules and given one to.
Well, I've just offered one to Chris Evans as well for free, so I can't be knocking. I can't be
He
giving
can
them out
buy
like
his
confirmed.
own.
I'm not
He
a
can buy
charity.
his own.
No, he can't.
Yes,
It's a present. Everyone likes a present, don't they? It doesn't matter who you. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on Catch Up on Global Player. You'll also find LBC's shows to catch up on all of them, as well as the world's biggest podcasts. Download Global Player for free from your app store or head to globalplayer.com. Coming up at 4 on LBC, it's Tom Swarbrick. But now, well...
Do you already know?
It's Sheila Fogarty. Bum, 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 bum.
Oh, yeah. Mm,
Sheila Fogarty's here.
Yeah.
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 Sheila